welcome you to our 3-day tour, Rooted in Resilience in the DFW area. Ladies and gentlemen, to the sponsors, All of Us Research, the great campus leaders of Paul Quinn College, the distinguished speakers and students, it brings me great pleasure to stand before you at the college where my father graduated some 50 plus years ago and represent All of Us Research and the Black Brick Letter Consortium. I bid you welcome to the Rooted in Resilience 3-day tour. I hope that you all enjoy the exciting speakers to come, and further, I hope that today inspires ideas and discussions around the ways that we can allow our communities to become rooted. The purpose: Rooted in Resilience 3-day tour is designed to promote community resilience, to recognize the importance of individual and collective capacity to respond to adversities, and change and bolster exciting communities. True resilience encompasses all aspects of life to include lifestyle, behavior, environment, health, and wellness. Linking the past to the present and making necessary changes to the future can lead to generational resilience, forever impacting the future of our health. VGLC is committed to educate, empower communities to achieve better health and wellness by introducing them to all of us research programs. Too often, healthcare is one size fits all. Treatments meant for the average patient may not work well for individuals. All of us is working to improve healthcare through research, unlike research studies that focus on one disease or group of people. All of us research is building a diverse database that can inform thousands of studies on varieties of health conditions. So let's get rooted, because resilience is in our DNA. Next up, we have Arthur Gregg, member of the Black Letter Group Consortium. He's going to lead us in icebreakers in our introduction. Oh, we moved it around. I'm so sorry. Chantel, come on up, girl.
It's okay. It's okay. I would tell y'all something about the name Arthur, but that's all right. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today for Rooted in Resilience here at the beautiful campus of Paul Quinn College. And so our icebreaker is going to be something that, well, I'll just tell you like this. So we're going to do, if you know your name origin, and if more students are coming in, you can go ahead and come in right now, it's all good. But we're gonna do, and I have to take my glasses off because you know if you wear glasses and you wear this mask, they fall up. So anyway, so this is what we're gonna do. We want you to find the nearest person closest to you, and you can do this at home as well. And if you're at home, I'm trying to see, go to somebody in the living room, whatever. But what we want you to do is discuss your name origin. And my name is Shantara. And I actually had to, well, my aunt named me, and she will tell everybody that she named me, even if people don't ask. She wants people to know that she named me. Well, people would ask me all the time, what does your name mean? And, you know, I didn't have a meaning, but I had to make up a meaning because I would get asked all the time. So Terra means earth, and we know that, I forget who taught me that, but Terra means earth. And then Shan, even though my name is S-H-A-N, I took it for, I had it mean enchantment because I like music and I like to sing. So I decided my name means music of the earth. Right? Like, isn't that, okay? So what I would like for you to do is our little icebreaker is discuss what your name means if you know. And if you don't know, this is a prime opportunity to make up a meaning for your name. And make sure that each person gets to talk. Don't be like me and take over the whole conversation. But discuss the origin, the root of your name. You may begin.
Well, we got it all. What? Alicia is the vernacle of Alice, which means to tell the truth. And so when they were calling my name, they would ask me to tell the truth. Hey, come here. Tell the truth. And Craig is means spirit. So I don't know. But that's how I know it. The last name is soul, the first name is spirit. You got your that's pretty much it. Your turn. All right. I'm looking this up. I've been told, but I would like to know, see what has been said, but I know that my father is African American, and African American
And so my name is very from the other name after
Free, but there are some people here who have filled out their phone or their notepad
So we
and
have
have
a
looked
land,
up
so that's
their name. And so feel free to do that as well.
And I
Look
was
and
trying to
see if you
like
can
I said,
find what your name is.
Let's see what it says.
She doing research.
And it has like some personal, it means that you have
You know what? I knew this was
People are learning.
I gotta hit that.
Okay, oh, that was there. The hidden essence.
Okay, so I have, my story is because my first name is Jennifer. Yeah, and think about the child named Jennifer.
You got king and queen.
Listen, come on, king and queen.
So I hated my
Noble,
name.
queen, Israel, king,
Listen. See, for those of us at home,
And I
or
literally.
if you're zooming in from your office, people are learning that we have kings and queens in the room. You already knew that. But there are crowns walking around. We have Brazilians walking around.
So this is
Why you say about Vanilla? Vanilla is Jennifer. Vanilla. So I never got it. So she was trying to.
Okay, so we're going to stop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I have heard kings and queens on this side. There's been some people expressing how their name comes from a king.
yes.
We have a queen as well. I'm sorry?
Queen of the wood.
Queen of the woods. Listen,
Right.
you better come on, the queen, and run the woods. I heard resilience. I heard resistance. I've heard, what do we have back here? Oh, the heavens. And so this is important to know because when people ask you what does your name mean, and especially if you are a person of color, people always ask you what your name means because it's so unique and it's so different. And that's why I'm telling you, I came up with Enchantment of the Earth, but I would advise you to just think about your name. And more importantly, think of what your name means to you. Think about the root. Think about who named you. Think about how that carries you out throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your life. And really, our names are bigger than just a name. They're bigger than just what we put on a form on a sheet of paper. And so thank you for participating in our icebreaker. Hopefully you can see me smiling through this face covering. We are so glad that you joined us. And now we will have greetings on behalf of Paul Quinn College. Good morning. We are so delighted to have you here with us today. And I am Kelsey Thompson. I serve as one of the managers for external affairs. And I want to say I'm also registered for today. And I bring you greetings on behalf of the Quinn Nation and Dr. Michael J. Sorrell, our president, and also Mr. Maurice West, who has been an integral part of planning this process with you, with our campus. And we are delighted to see you. And as we say, once you come to Paul Quinn, you're a Quinnite. You're all honorary Quinnites. And we look forward to serving you and having a great time today. Thank you.
All right, yes,
Woo! I'm a Quinnite.
I'm a Quinnite.
I feel it. Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. Get excited. It's so great to be here at the Rooted in Resilience Student Symposium. I said it was so Welcome to you that are watching us virtual. We're so excited that you're here. We want you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. So, I want you to know that this is going to be live streaming. We're videotaping today, so if you're virtually and you don't want to be videotaped, you may want to turn it off now.
if you don't want to be photographed, you may want to turn your cameras on, but that's totally up to you. We want you to enjoy yourself. You do you. But on the screen up here, for all of our folks in the audience, we have a QR code. And before we get started, we want to take a pre-survey. This pre-survey is to see what you know about the All of Us research program. You know, so go get your cameras out. I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to do that. You online, it should be in your chat.
Oh.
We're gonna talk about the All of Us research program. And we got a PowerPoint for you. And my place is fogging like this. I'm like, I can't see it this eye. I can't see that. So while they're loading up that video, that PowerPoint, we're gonna get started. But you got time to take that survey. 5 questions, maybe 2, maybe 3.
Oh.
All right. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Yes, ma'am. I gotta look over this so I can see the screen behind me. I'm gonna click it. I'm gonna click it in. And click it in. Yes. It's not moving forward. She has it. Little technical difficulties, you know. That's what happens. Every now and then, you know. So, here we go, the All of Us Research Program. So, before we can talk about the All of Us Research Program, we need to talk about what is health research. So, for the first step to understand the concept of health research, research is a process of finding out new things. Health research is a process of finding out new things about improving people's health care. Do you know that the majority of health research has been conducted with middle-aged Caucasian men as participants? Did y'all know that? You knew that, okay.
Yeah.
That means that medicine or treatment resulting from that research is designed specifically for that demographic. Communities who are underrepresented in medical research then are at risk for experiencing negative responses because it's not the best for their body. Going forward, we need to do a better job of including all types of people in health research. The only way we can fix this injustice is to what? To help. That's my note. Oh, we lost the picture. Okay, so I am from the Black Greek Letter Consortium, and with the Black Greek Letter Consortium, I don't even think I told y'all my name. And when we did the name activity, you know, I had a problem with my name many moons ago. So I'm Jennifer J.J. Jones. I go by J.J., and I am the program lead for the Black Greek Letter Consortium. And the Black Greek Letter Consortium is made up of the 9 Black Greek Letter organizations. So we have a picture of all our presidents there on the screen, and that's who we are. And we are responsible for engaging our community, the community in which we serve, on the All of Us research program. That's what we do. Okay. So what is All of Us research program? I'm going to tell you because I can tell by your eyes you want to know. The All of Us research program is led by the National Institutes of Health that's working to improve healthcare through research. Unlike research studies that focuses on one disease or a group of people, All of Us is building a diverse data set that can inform thousands of studies on a variety of health conditions. It is a longitudinal effort to gather data for 1 million or more people living in the United States to accelerate research and improve health by taking into account individual differences in lifestyle, environment, and biological makeup. All of Us is the largest and most inclusive health research program
ever. So we're gonna talk about precision medicine. We are all different, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right, y'all love this problem. Y'all just
Yeah.
call and respond. But when we go to the doctor, our treatments are often the same.
Yeah.
Our health care and treatment should be tailored for you. This is what's called precision medicine. Precision medicine is a new approach to improving health, treating diseases, and finding cures. It acknowledges that one-size-fits-all approach to medicine isn't the best because we know that what works to treat me may not work to treat you.
That's right.
Each person is different. Factors that greatly impact our health are our genetics, our lifestyle, and our environment. Ultimately, precision medicine can produce more accurate diagnosis, earlier detection, and better prevention strategies and treatment choices. So here's some examples of precision medicine. So now you see I wear glasses, and a couple of y'all should have, she has her glasses on. If I was to take my glasses off and we were to switch them, I probably could not see through yours, and you could not see through mine. So that's what precision medicine is. So when you go to the eye doctor, you take your own eyes, you don't take anybody else's eyes, and you're treated for whatever your stigmatism, whatever it is, and you're using your own eyes. So that's what it is. And here's some more examples. You got blood transfusions, insulin pumps, and hearing aids that are all precision medicine. So we're going to talk about the social determinants of health. Yes. A growing body of research shows that centuries of racism in the United States have had a profound and negative impact on communities of color. The impact is pervasive and deeply embedded in our society, affecting where one lives, where they learn, work, worship, and play, and creating inequities in access to a range of social and economic benefits, such as housing, education, wealth, and employment. These conditions, often referred to as social determinants of health, are key drivers of health inequities within communities of color, placing those within those populations at a greater risk for poor health outcomes. So here's the part where you can become a true partner, a true participant. Pull out your phones. Everybody pull out your phones. And I want you to go to your Google Play or Apple App Store and find the All of Us Research app. Look at y'all. I love y'all. Y'all enjoy it. I love it.
Hold on.
Well, we got some people in the audience that's a little slow. The virtual folks, I know y'all got this going on and y'all already flipped it up.
I'll catch up.
All right. So if you want to know more about the information on how to enroll, you need to visit All of Us website at joinallofus.org/together. I'm going to say that again. joinallofus.org/together. // Thank you very much, Ms. Alicia. There you can learn more about the program or choose to sign up if you are ready to do that today. You can do that today. Or you can download the All of Us Research app in the Google Play Store or the Apple stores. You may notice when you pull your phone out that there are 2 All of Us apps in the Apple Store. Please be sure to download the one named All of Us Research with the white background created by Care Evolution. There's 2 of them. The white background. And you know the All of Us app can be downloaded on your computer, your phone, your iPad, your tablet, all your devices. So we're going to talk about enrollment. Okay, here we go. Enrollment is your next step. Once you've created your account, you will be asked to give your consent. This includes reviewing a series of videos which will provide more detailed information about the program. These describe all the types of information you may be asked to give. Once you feel comfortable that you know what to expect, and if you're ready to give your consent, you'll electronically sign the consent form. You can do all of this from your computer, tablet, smartphone, or in a partner center, in one of the partner centers. You may also elect to share your electronic records, which is a digital version of your medical chart, and complete the consent to give DNA results.
You will be asked to answer several health surveys in combination with other health information. The answers provided in these surveys can help researchers identify patterns about how your lifestyle, our lifestyles and background affect our health. Amazing. After these initial steps, you may be asked to share your physical measurements and provide your biological samples so that the program can help researchers better understand how different factors, including your genetics, make our participants unique. So here's our call to action again. Pause for a moment, and I want you to go to that site, and you can join right now today. You can create your account, and that's just to get the information. No, really, get the information, because one of the things that we need to learn to be as a people is a champion for our own health.
That's right.
We have to do that. And so I would say, even with the All of Us research program, go to the website and get the information. And when you have the information and you feel comfortable and you want to sign up, sign up. I signed up. And, you know, I feel so much knowledgeable about my own health. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, I can't do that. The All of Us Researchers Convention, this is something that's coming up, and this is a great thing for our students that are here today because we're talking about research. So the All of Us Researchers Convention provides an opportunity for a broad spectrum of researchers using the All of Us Research Program data and tools offered through the Research Hub to showcase their work with colleagues, peers, and others who share a passion for advancing health research. The 2-day virtual event will focus on researchers at various educational and professional career stages across 2 separate but linked events. The Minority Student Research Symposium, which is March the 31st, that's coming up, and the All of Us Science Day, which is April the 1st. Greater participation of all racial and ethnic groups is needed in biomedical research. URMs represent over 30% of the United States population, but less than 9% of STEM PhD members and 7% of all physicians. We need to catch up with that. Yes. We need our own researchers and we need our own physicians. We know that the diversification of the biomedical workforce will help address the critical need the United States faces to reduce racial and ethnic health and healthcare disparities. So now, whenever there's a pre, there's always a post. So I want you to get out your phones, your tablets, your book, QuickBooks, whatever, that's not one. Whatever you can. I want you to scan the code. And those of you who are virtually, scan your codes. Here's an opportunity to see what you've learned. We want to see what you've learned. This is only a test for the next 3 seconds. We're going to conduct this test to see what you learn. So I hope you're a little bit more educated about the All of Us Research Program. Those of you who are here, we have a table in the back, and please, 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 please come by and get more information that you can take home and share with your family. All right. Okay. Now, next up, we have a very, very, very special guest today. And we're very excited to have him. He just came on board of NIH recently, and I'm going to read his bio, and he is virtual today, so you will be able to see him. For those of you who are here in the audience, and then those of you who are virtual, you'll be able to see him as well. So, Dr. Karine S. Watson, get this, is DHS, MS, MPH, is the Chief Engagement Officer of the National Institutes of Health of the All of Us Research Program. Karine leads the All of Us Research Program's efforts to foster relationships with participants, communities, researchers, and providers across the U.S. to help build one of the largest, most diverse health databases of its kind to study health and illness. Prior to joining the NIH, Karine spent over 15 years as a community engaged research scientist with prior research funding from the NIH addressing cancer prevention and control. Karine also held administrative roles in leading research and engagement in federally qualified health centers in the Chicagoland area. So without further ado, it gives me great honor and pleasure to introduce and bring forth to you on the screen, Dr. Watson.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. I heard it was loud. Yes. I am so excited to be here today. I hear a slight echo. Is anyone else to that echo?
It's okay.
Okay. All right. I'm excited to be here. I want to engage in a brief conversation just about my role in the research program, my role as a chief engagement officer. But before I do that, I have to thank the organizers of the event. I have to thank the leadership and Paul Quinn and Jennifer. Thank you for your support in this work as well. And thank you to Black People Consortium and the work that you all have been doing to advance this forward. And I apologize that I really want to be there for the wrong person. I turn my camera around and show you the several inches of snow that we have here in Chicago in the area. And every single flight I try to get on stage is canceled. With the latest one having to leave after midnight. So I tried to get there in person, but unfortunately this weather, both here that we have in the Chicago area, and I guess some rain that you all is expected to have tomorrow, and in the Texas area, been from being in person. But I am there in spirit. And so thank you all for this opportunity. So I'll be before you briefly, and I want to make sure I leave some time at the end for questions. And Jeff, you did an amazing job at describing the research program and talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion in trials. And you also shared that you are a participant in the program, and I appreciate it. I too am a participant in the program. And it's so important, especially in February, 365, right? I love February, I like this month. I think it's important for us to talk about the importance of diversity in clinical trials every day of the year. And I'll start with why it's so important to have this conversation at Paul Quinn, why it's so important to have this conversation with students and researchers of color. Because one thing I always like to say is that the messenger matters. We know that there's been research that shows that in science and in other areas, they call it cultural congruency, meaning that people are more likely to understand and be compliant with, and more important, build trust with researchers, providers, and even faculty that reflect the lived experience of the person delivering the message. What does that mean in a nutshell? Sometimes it means FUBU. It means for us, by us. And too often, we're on the cusp and the margins of research. I want to share with you a startling statistic. As Jennifer read my bio, I've been very fortunate and blessed to have a successful research career prior to joining the NIH. And part of that was due to intentional mentoring and sponsoring that I had from African-American researchers like Dr. Rick Kittles, a famous African-American geneticist at City of Hope in California, and my mentor who I did my postdoc with, Dr. Robert Wynn. Dr. Wynn is one of only about 2 cancer center directors in the entire country that is African-American. He's at the VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, Macy Cancer Institute. And it was so powerful and so important and an honor and privilege for me to be able to do my postdoc and be able to be mentored by Dr. Wynn and Dr. Kittles and countless other African-American men, because one, I was able to see directly in their lived experience how there could be a place for me. And there's an old adage that says, when you can see it, you truly can be it. And I really love what your president is doing there at the university, because what he understands is that this concept of being the only, being the first, that comes with a heavy burden. And that burden all the time doesn't allow you to achieve and succeed in the way that you can do and operate at your maximum potential, because you're navigating those things of what it means to be the only, that burden that it means to have on your shoulder of being the first in your family. While it's always an honor to be the first of something and it's a privilege sometimes to be the only, it comes with a burden. And when we don't want that in the scientific community. But the statistic I want to share with you is that prior to joining the NIH, I was fortunate to receive what's called an NIH R01 research grant. That's the gold standard. That's like the Oscars, if you will, of research. But the thing is that put me in a very small minority of researchers. Less than 2% approximately 2% of researchers that get R01s are African Americans. And that's the same statistic that we see when we think about the Oscars and other areas. And that should not be the case, because we know it's been demonstrated that when questions are developed, when research questions are developed by researchers that reflect the lived experience and the cultural congruency of the population that they're serving, we know that we have better health outcomes. Our populations are more likely to participate, and we end up really trying to address those gaps and those disparities that exist in health. I'll give you a couple of real life examples of why it's so important for African Americans to be leading how we're asking these research questions. My personal lived experience has been impacted by cancer since I was a young child. My birth mother actually died from complications of breast cancer in the mid 80s. Grew up in a small town in Michigan. Both of my parents migrated up north to the south. My mother was from Mississippi. My dad was from Arkansas. And like many Blacks at that time, if you haven't read The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkinson, I highly encourage you to read that book, because it's a perfect example to talk about how many African Americans came up north. And so my dad worked in the automobile industry trying to create a better life for his family. My dad had no formal education, but wanted to make sure that his children and his family had access to things, a better life. So lo and behold, when my mother got breast cancer, you can imagine how that really challenged the things that my dad was dealing with and that he was going through. And so what it really did for us as a family, had to teach us how to navigate a healthcare system. We didn't have access to clinical trials. There was no innovative or late-breaking drugs that my mother had access to. And unfortunately, she ended up losing her battle to breast cancer and leaving my dad to raise us. But fast forward, my dad gets remarried. And my new mother, I don't say stepmom, it's my new mom, has challenges within the healthcare system. And several years later, my dad then gets complications and gets diagnosed with colorectal cancer and diabetes. And in 2010, my dad actually died from complications of colorectal cancer and diabetes. And medicine was not precise for my father. There was no one asking questions about his family history. Jennifer gave that great example of how her glasses are precise for her, and that she can't just take off her glasses and give them to someone else, because that would not be precision medicine. It's the same for cancer treatments. What we now know about colorectal cancer is that African Americans need to be screened often earlier. We need to be having conversations with our doctors about our family history, about first-degree relatives, whether that's a mother, father, sister, brother, or other family members, and even other degree relatives like our uncles and our grandparents. What cancers have they had, and when were they diagnosed with those cancers? So fast forward, not only was my father impacted by a complication of colorectal and diabetes, last April of 2021, my oldest brother died from complications of colorectal cancer. And it was so difficult for me to navigate my brother's transition at that time, because I was actually doing a research study on colorectal cancer screening with Black men. I was working with barbers, I was working with fraternity members, I was working with faith leaders, because I understood that they had this concept that Black men were, quote unquote, hard to reach in clinical trials. As a researcher, I've never had an issue reaching Black men in my studies. I've never had a research issue with Black men trusting me to be engaged in research, because I've always built relationships with communities prior to engaging those communities in research studies. I've always talked about the importance of what happens when we're not at the table, how medicine is not precise for us if we're not part of asking the questions and generating the data. So when I had to navigate the loss of my brother from colorectal cancer, what was striking to me was how the healthcare system, my other family, I'm the youngest of 9 children, and I had to be the one telling my other siblings to go get screened, go get their colonoscopies, make sure they're talking to their doctor about diet and lifestyle, because they weren't, their physicians and their healthcare providers were not having those conversations with them in and of itself. And I'll end with this example of also doing the work that I was doing. It was also at the height of Chadwick Boseman's untimely death from colorectal cancer. And I was engaged in a group of Black men, and I was calling them citizen scientists. It's not a name that I created. It was a concept that was created by one of my community partners at Project Brotherhood. Project Brotherhood is one of the oldest clinics and community-based organizations on the south side of Chicago, working with and for Black men to develop screening, prevention, and other holistic health services for Black men. And I'm working with Project Brotherhood to develop this citizen scientist program. What we did is that we got everyday Black men, like I said, that were barbers, pastors, member of the fraternities, member of the Mason groups, just active leaders in their communities. And we train these Black men how to be advocates, to go out and engage other Black men to be an active participant in their healthcare. So doing one of the trainings that we had for these African-American men around colorectal cancer as citizen scientists, I had an expert on there, an African-American surgeon, Dr. John Stewart, a Howard University alumni. Dr. Stewart was on there talking to these Black men about when and why they should get screened for colorectal cancer. And he told them that the American Cancer Society had changed the age guideline from 50 to 45. There was one participant in the program who said, well, Dr. Stewart, my doctor told me I don't qualify to get screened for colorectal cancer because I'm not old enough. And Dr. Stewart had to remind that person, he said, no, your doctor may not even be aware that the guidelines have changed. And so, in the spirit of the Zoom world, this particular citizen scientist actually called his doctor, while he was on the phone and said, you need to give me a colonoscopy. I need to get screened. And the doctor told that participant, actually, you don't qualify. You're not old enough. You're not 50. And he said, no, a Black doctor just told me that the guidelines changed and that many primary care providers are not aware that the guidelines have changed. Long story short, that young man went on to get screened for colon cancer and ended up finding a polyp. And that polyp, had it not been removed, could have grown on to become a cancerous polyp, but it was removed and prevented. And I like to tell that story because what if I didn't have a Dr. Stewart that was engaging other African-American men and talking about this? What if that African-American man didn't have the agency to call his primary care provider and advocate for the screening he needed and would have waited for several years? He could have been one of those statistics that we see with African-American men being diagnosed with late-stage prostate cancer, what we saw in the untimely death of Chadwick Boseman. And you may say, well, Karine, what does all this have to do with the All of Us Research Program? It has absolutely everything to do with the All of Us Research Program, because as Jennifer noted, we are building one of the most diverse data sets and databases that exist. Unfortunately, cancer research has often only included less than 6% of African Americans in clinical trials who are eligible to participate in research. What this means, it means that when we develop treatments, when we develop interventions, when we think about ways that we need to come up with screening guidelines, if those things are developed without the data of people who carry the greatest burden of disease on those research populations, we're developing interventions and treatments for you without you. And what that means is that the medicine will not be precise for you. And the last example I'll give to you before I open up for questions is another example that I had. And this may sound like another challenging outcome, but it actually had a beautiful ending. My new mother was diagnosed with lung cancer while I was doing another lung cancer screening research program. So my research portfolios existed across prostate cancer screening, colorectal cancer screening, lung cancer, breast cancer, and cervical cancer screening. What I did is I worked with community members, I worked with primary care providers to come up with interventions that could get community members, primarily Black and Brown community members, into screening, do interventions that could get them screened early and on time, and begin to develop some of those messaging that could begin to disrupt the barriers that we have in getting screened. And so I work with churches and other faith groups and other community members. So imagine my surprise when my mother and my family member called me and said that my mother was going back and forth to the doctor because she was having some chest pains and some cough, uncontrolled cough. My mother was never a smoker, never worked in an environment that would have, so we thought, exposed her to the risk of lung cancer. But I had to advocate as her son for her to get aggressive screenings to make sure that nothing was going on. Lo and behold, they found a nodule, which was a tumor, and we found out that it was late-stage lung cancer. Right before they came up with a treatment plan for my mother that was going to be in a very aggressive treatment plan that would include chemotherapy because she didn't qualify for having the tumor surgically removed. But before they started the chemotherapy on my mother, I knew as a lung cancer researcher that there had been some late-breaking, innovative treatment mechanisms for lung cancer treatment, And that meant that they simply had to take a sample of that tumor with a needle, a biopsy, and then test that tumor to see if it qualified for certain genetic mutations that will qualify for these innovative chemotherapy treatments. They were not going to do that. They were just going to start this chemotherapy, just like a boom, let's just hit it and hope and pray that this chemotherapy works. But they didn't have to do that. There were innovative treatments out there. So lo and behold, they end up, and I called my boss, Dr. Robert Wynn, who was the cancer director, and I talked to Dr. Wynn, and Dr. Wynn said, Karine, don't let them start treatment until they do these molecular marker testing. No, that may sound like a big word, but it's basically a test in the lab that they could see, develop a chemotherapy program that was precise for her. And lo and behold, they did that. And she qualified for this innovative chemotherapy treatment. And what the beauty of that is that as a result of her qualifying for that chemotherapy treatment, it extended her quality of life for almost 18 months. And when I say she ended up losing her battle to lung cancer in March of 2020, but it was a beautiful process because what it did is it allowed us as a family to say goodbye to our mother. It allowed her to die with dignity. It allowed us to put her in hospice and allowed her to transition under her own terms. While many families don't get the beauty and the blessing of that. Many families are losing their loved ones without the ability to say goodbye, losing their loved ones without those loved ones being able to have a say-so in how they transition. And my mother was able to plan her services, tell us what she wanted to wear, what we wanted to wear to her funeral, tell us who she wanted to preach at her funeral services and what songs she wanted to be sung. And that may sound like a sad outcome to some, but what the reason why it's a beautiful outcome to me is because medicine worked in her favor. Although it didn't cure her lung cancer, it allowed her to have an extended better quality of life. And for us as a family to really be able to take part in understanding her care. And it's so important that we have researchers that reflect our community. So I'm thankful that you all announced our Minority Student Research Symposium. And our partnerships with organizations like the Black Greek Letter Consortium allows us to ensure that we are creating a pipeline of researchers like students. My hope and my prayer is that there are some students in the audience today that hears both my stories, hears the opportunities that exist in all of us research database, and that they say, I don't just want to sign up as a participant, but I want to become a researcher. I want to be the one asking the questions. I want to be the one that's going to be developing interventions, treatments, and cures that can begin to address disparities that plague African-American communities disproportionately. So I want to open it up for questions now about how we can be a part of setting the difference, be a part of the solutions in addressing this issue of diversity in clinical trials. Thank you again to Jennifer and the organizers of this event and the leadership at Paul Quinn for giving me the opportunity to talk about the All of Us Research Program. Thank you. Do we have time for questions?
Yes, can you hear me, Dr. Watson? Dr. Watson? Okay.
Not hearing anything in terms
I'm
of
going to keep
questions.
going. I just want to thank Dr. Watson for this wonderful and powerful story and sharing all of those great nuggets. Y'all get y'all bags full of golden nuggets? Did y'all get those nuggets? We've had a lot of questions in the actual group chat from our virtual, and we have some questions too from those that are here. So my first question is, and hopefully can get to him, they can text it to him, how do you find Black mentors when wanting to do research?
That's a great question. One of the ways I found the way I met Dr. Wynn was that we were both, I was a young faculty at the time. I was younger, this is over 10 years ago, younger faculty member on campus. And I saw this Black man walking on campus. He had a little fro, a little high-low fade. And I when I saw him, on predominantly white campuses when you're a minority on that, Chris, I think you might want to mute your screen. I did the what's up head nod. And I made eye contact, and then I sent him an email later on. I said, I see that you're new on campus. Welcome to UIC. We didn't have many Black men in leadership roles on our campus at the University of Illinois, Chicago. So I reached out. I was proactive, and I reached out. But that reaching out has to go both ways. As researchers, we have to do the reaching out as well. We shouldn't put that onus all on students to reach out to us. So one of the things now that I do when I'm on campus, or when I was in faculty of university, I make myself available to students. In my research lab, I've had over 7 young African-American men to come on as research assistants for me. Those African-American men went on to medical school, PhD programs and others, and many of them also got a chance to get a reduced or free education as a result of being my research assistant, because the grants that I had supported them in their educational and their tuition support. And so, but to answer the question directly, how do you go about getting mentors? One, reach out, make yourself available. But I also want to put the onus on the researchers and the mentors and the faculty. We need to make ourselves available to students. And when students reach out to us, we need to reply back. We need to attend the fraternity meetings, attend the sorority meetings. Wherever Black students are as faculty and researchers, we need to be there. And as a student, wherever Black faculty are, you need to be there. But we also need to create intentional networking opportunities. And one of the programs that we have in the All of Us Research Program is a partnership with Baylor University, where Baylor University is actually connecting research mentors with students, where they can have a mentoring experience. And so if you have not signed up for the Minority Student Research Symposium, please sign up for that day, because you can learn how you can get a research mentor through the All of Us Research Program.
Did y'all get that?
Yes, yes.
Good. Reach out, availability, and networking, correct? So with that being said, what opportunities are available for HBCUs and HBCU researchers to partner with All of Us Research Program?
Thank you for that. That is a great question. We are doing, I don't believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion is achieved by happenstance. I don't believe it just happens. I believe you have to be intentional with that. So whenever someone tells me that they can't find talented or quote unquote qualified African Americans, I tell them that you have not been looking. If you tell me that you can't find Black researchers or Black young faculty or Black graduate students, I say the first place you should stop should be our historically Black colleges and universities, our HBCUs. Because the talent is there, the pool that is there, but we need to give resources. So one of the things that we've done in the All of Us Research Program through our partnerships with Pyxis Partners and others is that we've actually provided funding to historically Black colleges and universities and provided training to those partners. For example, we've done some work with Xavier University in Louisiana to ensure that we've done training workshops on R and Python. R and Python are two scientific programs that you have to know how to navigate if you want to access our research data. And so we work with partners that are doing that training, but we need to do more. We've done some good work with historically Black colleges and universities. We are currently working with the Delta Research Educational Foundation, DREF. Even our work with the Black Greek Letter Consortium puts us on the campuses of many HBCUs, but we need to do more. And I am committed to doing more. I am committed to making sure that we have more conversations like this, that we have more intentional partnerships with HBCUs, where we hopefully develop research ambassador programs from HBCUs, where those researchers and faculty are mentoring other students, and that they get the resources and support that they need. Because one of the things that we have to understand is that oftentimes we need to provide resources. When I say resources, I mean funding support often as well, right? Because if a researcher or a faculty member is taking away time to do mentoring and to do research on the All of Us program, that may be taking away the time that they have for the teaching that they're required to do in those institutions. So we have some amazing partnerships with Dillard University, Xavier University in Louisiana, but we need to have more. And I'm committed as the Chief Engagement Officer to developing more robust partnerships with HBCUs.
Thank you for that. One other question that we have is, a generation of young African Americans, how do we encourage our older and hesitant relatives and loved ones to get involved in All of Us research in general?
That is a great question. When I told my family that I was, because I had one career path where I was going into medicine and going down this one route, and then when my family found out that I was going to go into research and public health research specifically as a full-time career, I didn't, some of my family was not encouraging of that, because they use that word that we often hear when it comes to research, that guinea pig. They say, so you're going to be out there asking people to be guinea pigs? And many of them mentioned the United States Public Health Service study that happened in Tuskegee, Alabama. We inappropriately called that Tuskegee experiment. Please do not call that study the Tuskegee experiment, because it's the United States Public Health Service study. And we call it the Tuskegee experiment. We put a negative connotation on Tuskegee, Alabama. Tuskegee did not ask for that study to be conducted there. And we also hear stories of Henrietta Lacks. And so that's fresh in the minds of our ancestors and our older adults and many of our younger adults. Those things happen, and it's fresh in their minds about that. And as a result, we talk about this concept of medical mistrust that's real, but we don't talk about the importance of being trustworthy. We talk about people trusting the system, but we don't talk about the system becoming more trustworthy. I tell my colleagues that don't get it twisted. When Black and brown, when those African-American patients, those older African-American patients are a little hesitant to quote unquote trust you because you're asking them to participate in a clinical trial, that's not a bad thing. That hesitancy is actually a good thing. Sometimes that hesitancy has been a thing that has saved our lives, prevented us from being marginalized or getting a treatment or something that may not be the best for us. So don't let that justified critical nature discourage you. That's what I tell my colleagues. But engage with those populations in conversations about why it is important for us to participate. Some work that I did with, I was working with some Black men around a prostate cancer screening study. And some of the older Black men in the study said, no, I don't trust that research thing because, you know, I don't want, you know, I get faith and I believe that God is going to heal me and I don't want to be a part of this research study. And I said, I respect that decision, sir. I said, let me tell you one thing. Most research studies that have been done for prostate cancer screening have been done on white men. So when we get screening guidelines that are recommended for prostate cancer screening, I need you to know, sir, that those screening guidelines were developed because those studies were done by many times white researchers and done in predominantly white populations. As a result, we're then recommending screening recommendations for Black men that have not been developed for us, by us, or with us. As a result, that's not precise. So when I was doing some work with Dr. Kiddos and an African-American urologist, Dr. Adam Murphy, we actually found out that one of the prostate cancer screening program indices called Prostate Health Index with PHI was actually done in mostly European men. And the reference range, that range that says this is the cutoff when we think that you need to have to say that something has gone wrong in the screening, that the reference range was actually too narrow and would have missed aggressive prostate cancers in Black men had we not done this study that was including African-American men. And I told them that story to let them know that when we include African-American men, and this study, this is for other populations as well. I could tell you the same thing about African-American women in cervical cancer screening. I could go on and on and on about instances and times when the inclusion of diverse populations has allowed us to have better treatment and screening outcomes and earlier and better prevention. And so one thing that I tell our populations, particularly our older adults, is you're justified. And I acknowledge the historical ills that have happened. That's the reason why you may not be trusting of the system. But don't let that justified medical mistrust be the reason why you don't participate. And there's things in place today that were not in place when we talked about those years of the United States Public Health Service study that happened in Tuskegee, Alabama. We have institutional review boards and other things in place that were not in place back then.
That's amazing, because you touched on one of the questions that we had about, I've heard about the natural remedies that may be better than medicine. What do you think? And you covered that so eloquently just now in your discussion, talking about your family and those who said, you know, I'm just going to trust in God. I'm just going to see my way through or pray my way through. So with that being said, Dr. Watson, I am actually at my last question. And I want to start by saying thank you so much. Thank you so very, very much for the time that you spent with us today. But do you have any words for African-American student researchers that may be experiencing frustration due to the lack of access to research data?
I do. I was told when I started this work, I was told that I wouldn't get funded. I was told that by focusing my research on African-American men that I wouldn't find enough data. I was told so many no's and so many reasons why, but all you need is one yes that can dismantle all those no's that you've been told. And one person can sometimes change the trajectory of your career. And that's one of the things that Dr. Wynn did for me. So I would tell those students to stay at it, to persevere, and even getting access to the All of Us research data. Our workbench, our Researcher Workbench may be able to give you some of the data that you need. And if you have challenges logging on to our Researcher Workbench, please contact us. We are willing to work with the leadership at Quinn, to work with the Black Greek Letter Consortium, to develop workshops and to provide whatever resources that students need to be able to access our database so that you can get access to diverse database. All of us has over 20% African Americans represented in our study right now. That is unprecedented, as Jennifer said earlier. So please reach out to us so we can be an advocate and to help you get that data. And if you get discouraged and you can't find researchers that look like you need a support system, reach out to me. Reach out to me and I will connect you with other researchers who can be that cheering squad that you need.
You just gave me a little grace. I thought that was my last question, but we have someone right here in the audience that has a question for you, and I hope you will just allow us to get one more question before we end this segment. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that.
All right, here you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Karine Watson. How do we better expand our researcher pipeline in elementary, middle, and high school students?
That's a great question. It's a lot of it starts with funding and exposure. I've done work with teachers at minority serving institutions, and they have K through 12 programs. I first got exposed to a research experience through our Urban League and a program when I was in junior high and high school. It's called the New Lights, the National Urban League Initiative, National Urban League's Initiative to Excel and Succeed. It was a STEM program. And you're absolutely right. We have to make sure that the pipeline is not leaking. So we need to ensure that our elementary teachers and even our high school and junior high teachers are equipped with the resources, are equipped with the things to expose students to research early on, to have summer camps in our elementary schools, to have those students to begin to ask research questions right now. My research interest started, I still remember to this day, my first research project in 8th grade when I was looking at chlorophyll in plants. I got 2 plants. I watered one plant with water and I watered one plant with water and bleach to see what was the impact of the chlorophyll, impact of the chlorine, on the plant. And I asked a research question from it. That was over 30-some years ago. And I still remember that research question. And so that just lets you know that when you plant that seed early, it can light a fire and an interest in these young Black scientists that will carry them on through their career. So the way we have to do that, though, is to fund them. One of the ways. We have to provide teachers with opportunities. We have to make sure that teachers have the resources that they need and access to these programs. And there are many cancer centers and many research institutions that are working with elementary, high school, and junior high students to make sure that the pipeline starts as early as K through 12.
Wonderful. Did y'all get that seed part? So we can talk about that rooted again with the word resilience. So as I do that, continue to think about rooted in resilience. And Dr. Watson, again, thank you so much because you left us with some nuggets. You left us with some knowledge seeds. Now I got my water ready. And so I know that I am about to be rooted in resilience. And I have a story to tell and an educational responsibility to get out into my community and do this. So up next, we have Arthur Gregg. And he's going to keep the momentum going, the excitement going, as he come up to share some things with you.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Brother Washington. I'm out to get that talk from you when you come to Texas, because you owe me that. You got it. Awesome. Well, thank you. Yes, definitely nuggets. We've heard a lot, and we sat for a little while, so let's, we're going to do something interactive now. So you're going to maybe move around a little bit. But how many of you grew up, and probably most of us grew up with someone you went to school with maybe who you knew by their nickname? Who you never really didn't know their real name. You just knew them by their nickname. I went to school with a guy named Keyboard. He lived in my neighborhood. I knew him since kindergarten. And so we graduated. I sat there and I was waiting on them to call Keyboard's name and graduated. We went through the whole class and I said, well, y'all didn't call Keyboard's name. And they said, oh yeah, he was way back in the front. But that was because I didn't know Keyboard's government name. I didn't know his real name. And so a lot of us, that's the same way we are about illnesses. Because we grow up with these different names for different illnesses and these nicknames and given names. And so we never really make the connection until this graduation of some sort, whether that's at the doctor's office or at the mortuary. And so what we're going to do now is take a few minutes, and I want you to kind of move around and connect with a couple of people. And if you're online, if you're watching virtual, think about all of those illnesses that you heard, those names of illnesses that you heard growing up from your family, from Big Mama, from Auntie, from Uncle John, them, from them, that you just was supposed to know what it was. And so I want you to kind of connect up and list as many of them as you can. So everybody got that?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. So just kind of move on. I'm not going to move you. It's enough for y'all to move around. If you're online, get with your family. If you're not with your family, get with your friends. And we want you to put those lists in the chat. So let's move now.
There's something, have you ever heard of stockpiles? Y'all know what that means? Yeah, I didn't know what that was. Someone said, oh, I have piles. I was like, what is that? See now. They call it old timers, yeah.
I'm gonna give you one that I was grown and did the. I heard my mom tell my sister once, don't even think girl, she got that nasty girl disease. I was like, oh, I don't know what that is, but I was scared of her. So it sounds like y'all are kind of, so throw some of them out. Let's hear what you got.
Oh my God.
The sugar. Pressure. Yeah, I remember somebody said, ooh, go get my pressure pills. I think they were just pills. I'm like, pressure, okay. What else do we have? She's just forgetful. She's touched. How many of you had that uncle that you, or that person that you were kin to that they just kept in the back room? They just, oh, don't go back there. That's uncle. It's always the uncle. It's always the uncle. It's always the uncle, but there's always the one that say, don't go back there in that room, because you know, and they would just take his food and just sit it back there. You know. What else did we have? I learned something over here. Slow? What was slow? If you were slow, you were.
It's neurology, challenges, neurological, developmental challenges.
Developmental challenges, yeah.
Touch. She said touch.
I like that. I still use touch stuff there. With bubble gut. You had the bubble gut.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
So when we think about that, when we think about all of these different names of different diseases that we've heard, you know, and then so you think about, wow, diabetes. We think about
High blood pressure.
blood pressure. We think about, you know, stomach, irritable bowel issues. We think about all of these different things that we just said, you know, and it just was kind of out there. So we never really knew what it was. So we kind of just said, what was the one thing that could cure everything? Robitussin, baking soda, casserole. Casserole, I fell off a bike once and skinned up my knee real bad. My grandma said, oh, baby, just take some casserole. I was like, that was for my knee.
Oh, my goodness.
Witch hazel, ginger ale. Ginger ale cures everything. I got a headache, baby. And this is my favorite. I tell you, I asked this country before. You just need a bowel movement, that's all. If everything was something, my grandmother would come and she said, come on, boy, let me smell your breath. She said, oh, yeah, you need a bowel movement. I'm like, how can you figure that from this one? You know, so when we think about all of these things, you know, it's amazing how we've got to this point in life, because we just kind of fixed it the way we were taught. We just kind of called it what we thought it was. And so one of the things that I'm so appreciative about being a part of the BGLC and being a part of all of us is to understanding the importance of research.
Yes.
Understanding the importance of knowing what's going on with your body, knowing what's going on with us. I have type 2 diabetes. I go to the doctor once a quarter, and we have those conversations. I have an African American male doctor. We sit and talk about those conversations. When it's time for my prostate exam, we have those conversations. And so I think about that, and some of the things that Dr. Watson talked about, as I was taking notes of things that I'm going to challenge us to do. And that is know your family history, know your family health history. How many of you know, is it documented?
Yes.
Do we know what Auntie and Big Mama and Big Daddy, what they died from? What did they have? Do you know your history? And do you know if things are hereditary or if they're you just got it? You know, so it's so important that we know our family health history. Participating in research. Why is that important?
Treatments and cure.
Treatments and cure. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm diagnosed and treated, I don't want to be treated. Yeah, I want to know for me. I want my body, what works for my body.
That's right.
You know, I have had several been prescribed from other doctors different medication. I ask questions when I go to the pharmacist. I ask the pharmacist questions. I ask the doctor's questions. I read up about it. So know what it is that you're taking. Even we are such a trusting people. And so understand what it is that you're taking. Being a champion of your health. When your body, one of the things about when that light comes on in your car, to say check engine, you're quick to take that car and let somebody check it. It may not be back to the dealer, but you're quick to get that check engine light checked.
Yes, sir.
That's the same about your body. Do we do the same with our bodies?
Not all the time.
So as we're going through this and we're thinking about this, hopefully this is information that we can get out to our families, to our friends. Those of you who are virtual, I hope, I know you've listened to things. I know there are other things that we may have missed, but this is so important that we do the work to document our health history. And not just for us, but for our future.
Yes. Yes.
In particular for our future. If we spend more time documenting our health and understanding our health and passing that information on, imagine what we can do. Imagine how far we can get. And so I encourage you and I challenge you is that we do these things, that we become the champion for our health, that we know the name, and we help our family members who are older understand about medical research. Somebody asked a question about how do we get more our older generation and family members we have to educate them. We have to go to the doctor with them. We got to help them ask the questions. Sometimes they go, and it's not that they don't ask questions, they don't know the question to ask. And so we have to, what do they say? When you know better, you do better.
That's right.
So I think the more that you participate in medical research, work with all of us. If you haven't gone to, just go to the registration page and just read up. I'm not gonna browbeat you, but your health is your wealth.
That's right.
If we spend the money that we spend on our outer, on our inner, how amazing would it be for us? Because a lot of us look good on the outside, but do we know how we look on the inside? If they were to flip you inside out, would you still look as good? So that's our exercise. That was supposed to be, don't give me the mic because I can tell you, you've been a champion of your health. We have got to do that. So I'm going to turn it over now to, who do I get to go to now? Well, I get to introduce the workshop. I am so excited. Yes. Did y'all tell that I was the kid in the church who always had the Easter speeches, and I never had just the one-liner? I had the paragraph. Next up, we have the importance of, no, that's not what we have next. We have the All of Us Data Browser and Researchers Workbench Opportunities. And that's going to be, is that Emily?
Yes.
Emily Ruiz,
All right.
BS Research Assistant from Baylor Scott and White. Woo! Emily, you gonna tell us, you gonna give us all of this stuff? All right, y'all give it up one more time. Emily.
Righty, new technology, you guys. So how do you do this? The little green button is forward. Cool, okay. Alrighty, hi everyone. So I work at Baylor Scott and White, and I'm the research assistant. One of the studies that I'm actually doing right now is the All of Us research program. So I'm just here to go ahead and give you guys a little bit more information about the Researcher Workbench and the data browser, and how you can access that, and how it's really informative for us as well. So building diversity in the All of Us research cohort. So one of the main things that we're aiming for is diversity. Of course, we want our research workbench to kind of model the world we live in, of course. So one of the key things that we are committed to is creating a demographically diverse research cohort and that can promote ethical use of our data and kind of generate outcomes that can help us and accelerate our research impact as well. We are committed to encouraging students and early career investigators to get involved in this. Start looking at this database and program and see where this data can help you with your research questions as well. And then we are committed to ensuring access for researchers for all types of institutions and organizations, and so that we can help kind of push this research effort that we have going on. And then what is the promise for the researchers? So the researchers have the opportunity to save time and resources, allocate their research beyond breakthroughs there for you. So one of the cool things about our database, it accumulates all of this data into one big cohort for you. So we have electronic health records, we have physical measurements, we have actual genomics in there as well, biosamples. And so it saves the researchers a lot of time. They don't have to go through all these different things and worry about creating their own sample groups. That information is already there for them to pull from. And they can look at it as really good longitudinal database as well, because we aim to follow our participants for 10 years. So we see them as they age, what type of sicknesses they develop, how healthy they are. If they move environments, we see that as well. So it gives us a lot of good information about that too for us. And then of course, our diverse cohort of participants. So we want to involve as many populations and as many ethnicities as possible, people from all different walks of life, healthy and sick, which is really important because we know research mainly focuses on sick people. We don't really have healthy people to compare it to. So that's a really important aspect of our research database and cohort as well. And the data is already cleanly curated, so researchers don't have to go through that added step for them too. And of course, we have really great software available to help researchers put all their research and information into one spot. And it's really user-friendly, I think, and there for that as well. And kind of how it works here for you. So we kind of have a tier on how this happens. So we have our participants share their data. That's, of course, electronic health records, their physical measurements, things like that. That goes through our participant data, which, of course, is de-identified to make sure that no personal information is accessed. And then that actually goes to the Research Hub. The Research Hub is the database in the workbench itself there for you. And then we have registered researchers who apply to actually work in the Researcher Workbench.
And that's where they can access a little bit more things such as your genomics and your biosamples there for you. And then the registered researchers then work in that workbench to create the research projects and kind of help with the research program as well. And then the research is underway. We have a really cool link where you can actually see what projects we have going on right now, which is really informative so that you can see that what is actually going on with the Researcher Workbench, and that's accessible to anyone. So like say I was a participant and I was wondering like, hey, why did I submit my sample in this? Why am I involved in this? It gives us a really good tool to see that it is going for good there for you as well, and advancing medicine. Now we're going to talk about the Research Hub itself. So we kind of have a tiered data accessibility here for us with the Research Hub. So you have your public tier. The public tier contains anonymized, aggregated data there for you, and that can be seen on the researchallofus.org. That's the link for it. And that's basically access to the public there for you. So you're able to see the data browser there for you, the research project directory, the publications, which is really cool too. You're able to see kind of data snapshots and surveys there for you. And I'll touch base on that a little bit more in these next slides. Now the registered tier, you have to gain access for this. So this is the data that contains curated, anonymized individual level data, which is available for registered users. And this is like the cohort builder where you're able to build your specific research groups. It has your database builder, your workspaces, your interactive notebooks, which are a really cool aspect of that as well from the researcher side, and the support hub there for you too. And then our control tier is the most secure tier there for us. So even if you're a registered tier, you have to do additional training to get access to this. And what this includes the genomic data here for you. And that's one of the main differences. And it includes additional information about the electronic health records and kind of additional demographic data from surveys. I can give you a little bit of information about that as well. And so this is kind of about the Research Hub website. This is the website for it as well, researchallofus.org. Anyone can access this. And the main goal is to provide more information about the program data and its tools. This allows researchers like, hey, I'm interested in maybe using this. Let me see what type of data it has and what's out there. So this gives you data snapshots, just a broad kind of participant metrics. You have your data browser, which is really interactive. You get to search specific things, look at charts, see the different demographics, ages, things like that. And then our survey explorer. So every participant does surveys. Right now we have about 6 surveys that they do. This information is on this database as well, so that you can see and access that information too. And those surveys include different things like their health, their family history, where they stay, different things like that as well. And then the Researcher Workbench is our most secure one there for you. This is restricted. It's a cloud-based platform to go ahead and design to execute rapid and hypothesis-driven research. So we always ask that researchers have a question. Why do I want to do this research? What am I looking for from this database? And it really helps to answer those questions quickly. And here's kind of a little bit more of a breakdown of it. So of course you have your public tier, which is your data browser, your data Snapchats, your survey explorer, and your help desk. And then from that, whenever you register and you're accepted, you'll get what's called a data passport there for you. You're able to go to a restricted area, which has the Researcher Workbench, which is a data dictionary, your concept set selector, your cohort builder, where you're able to build your own groups there for you, your notebooks, and of course your help desk as well. And this is about the data browser here, because the data browser is a really cool interactive tool. It provides summaries of the statistics for the program, and the growing database is open to everyone, so you can actually look at it today. If you want to, just go ahead and take a look at what's out there. There's no login. It allows participants to understand the makeup of the cohort, which is really cool, so participants have that added step where they can go in and look as well. It allows researchers to understand the characteristics of the participant population, so we're able to see a little bit more about what people are involved in this database as well. It explores the data types available, and then the plan allows the researchers to plan their research questions. And here's a little snapshot here for y'all, and a Snapchat, I guess. But at the top, you can see how it has this little search engine here for you. So you can actually search by specific keywords that you're looking for there for you. So you're able to break it down a little bit more. Now, some of the data might not be accessible to you, and that's just because it requires registration, but you're able to see some of the electronic health record database, your survey question, includes some really cool charts about kind of what all is attained in this. The actual workbench, so this is the Researcher Workbench. So how you go about the Researcher Workbench is first, you'll create a workspace where you can store all your data there for you, and analysis for a specific group. Then you'll create your cohorts, which are your participants there for you. Your cohort concepts, which are your variables, like say, someone who has high blood pressure, things like that. And then you can create your cohort reviews, your data sets, your notebooks, where your actual analysis is run there for you. And your projects will all live in one space. And it's a shareable space where other researchers are able to look at it as well, which I feel like is great, because research is a collaborative effort for everyone, and we should be open to the conversations from other people as well. And there's a little snapshot on the tools about how you build your cohorts and your data sets here for you. So the Researcher Workbench contains tools to build your own participant cohorts and data sets about these cohorts. Additionally, you can customize your own concept sets with medical concepts that are most relevant to you. So as you can see, kind of a little bit blurry here at the bottom, all these different concepts that can go from anything from medication to their labs, their genomics, their hospitals, their environments, their physical measurements. So you're able to specialize it to really fit your research, which is really great as well. And then here's a snapshot of the latest data release that we have. So it kind of breaks it down a little bit from our participants. So you have your surveys. This is the count of the participants that have completed those. Your physical measurements, your electronic health records. We actually have wearable physical measurements now, which is great, which is the Fitbits that we're able to access their data through. And then we also have this really cool All of Us COVID-19 Participant Experience Survey. It's provided us with a lot of good information about how COVID-19 has impacted people, both economically and health-wise too. And so what this really shows us is how it's expanded healthcare and upgraded tools to drive new mindful discovery here for you. So now for the first time, researchers have access to information about the All of Us participants with COVID-19 pandemic through answers to survey questions on mental health, social distancing, and economic impacts there for you. The new release also includes the program's expanded set of Fitbit data, as you see with the Fitbit there for you, with information about the participants' normal, everyday physical activity that we wouldn't have been able to know before. The new information in the Researcher Workbench highlights the All of Us comprehensive approach to data curation and how we collect it there for us. The program is building a database that enables researchers to easily look at data across different resources, offering a more detailed picture of the participant's health as a whole there for us. And that encompasses both your biological factors and your social determinants of health, like your environment and things like that. And so what's going on with the All of Us Research Convention? So the All of Us Research Convention provides an opportunity for a broad spectrum of researchers using the All of Us program and tools there for you. So we actually have a couple things coming up here. So we have a 2-day virtual event, which will focus on researchers at various educational and professional career stages across 2 separate events. So we have the Minority Research Symposium, which is March 31st, my birthday. And then we have the All of Us Science Day, which is actually April 1st, there for you. And at the bottom here, it has a link to where you can go ahead and register for those events as well. So it's highlighted here at the bottom. It's All of Us Research Convention.eFirst.com. And what is the MSRS? So the All of Us Minority Research Symposium elevates the work of student researchers from underrepresented communities by engaging minority students, faculty, and mentors through the database from the data browser to research, to design, and display a presentation of their findings there for you. So like we were speaking earlier, it's really important to have those mentor faculty kind of relationships there for you to help grow the minority representation in research there for us. And then we have Science Day. So the main thing about Science Day is to kind of bring the All of Us Research Hub projects directly to life. So this is where you're able to see what the All of Us Research Program has been able to achieve for you. So it's able to provide a platform for researchers using our database for us and the workbench to highlight their work and show us what this information is being used for, and showcase their methods and share their findings and help kind of researchers understand a little bit more about the workbench and now how they can use it to their full access and full potential as well. The primary audience that we're looking to go ahead and kind of come in with this program here is researchers not yet on the workbench, but curious. Maybe they've expressed some interest about our vast database there for us, or institution with DRAs or broader research community, just bringing as many people as possible. And how we can call to action. So you can register to attend All of Us Research Convention. Share information about the networks and the convention. Invite them to learn more. You can just click on the tab there for you, or visit the website. One of the main things I tell our participants is to look at the data browser.
Yes.
The data browser tells you a lot of good information and a lot of good kind of why am I doing this and what is it being used for. Because, you know, as me, if I was a participant, I want to be like, why do you need all this stuff from me? Why are you following me for 10 years? So I feel like that really provides them with, okay, I am benefiting society. I am benefiting the medical field and research to help medicine be more precise to me there for you. And that's the main thing, is precision medicine there for us. All of us are different. Our healthcare should be different as well. And in conclusion, the main things that we're looking to achieve with the All of Us Research Program, the workbench and the browser, is to assimilate the largest, richest biomedical database there for you of its kind, with plans for genomic data, which is going to be amazing, and the comprehensive clinical information. We're looking to successfully engaging participants as partners. Participants should know there's really more than just a number, that they're actually involved in this research as well, which I feel like is really important. We have new data types continuing to be rolled out. As we get more participants, as we get information, the researchers will as well. And then we can have participants willing to participate in studies there for you with specific populations or disease states possible. We help to facilitate research across multiple disease states that could serve as controls for disease-specific studies that lack healthy control, which is really important. Most of those studies that are going with cancer, they lack that healthy control, and this research can help with that as well. And that's about it, you guys.
All right, thank you. Yeah. You can answer them very everything that you just talked about.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. Real quick, Emily, as a researcher who now has access to the All of Us data browser and workbench, what benefits have you personally discovered?
Yeah, so I'm actually a research assistant, but that's perfectly cool. I'm in the research field as well. One of the really cool things that I've seen with this program is how it's been able to build people of all different types of ethics and minorities there for you. So one of the really strong things that we struggle with as research assistants is gaining the trust of people there for us. So I actually work at Baylor Scott and White at the Health and Wellness Center, which is at the Juanita Craft Center. So we're in South Dallas there for us. So of course we represent an underrepresented minority group that doesn't have the access to care that they should have there for them. And one of the really good things about our facility is that we're empowering, we're educating, we're actually giving people jobs of minority to help through research, so that we're able to break that ethical boundary there for you. So say I'm a white person and I'm coming to you or someone else with a different minority, there's that social border there for you, and employing people of minority and ethical different backgrounds, it helps break that social barrier, that you're not able to have that. You're able to open and talk more there for you as well.
Definitely want to be able to break the actual thickness and just be able to have those conversations. So we have another question from the chat is, how does all of us data differ from other databases that you may have reviewed?
Yeah, so I haven't reviewed very many different databases there for you, but the researcher database is unique in the vast variety of it there for you. So it has your electronic health records there for you. It has your physical measurements. It has genomics, which is great. One of the cool things about this research program is that it's kind of like an open-ended question there for you. So you don't know what you're actually getting back, but those things that you put back could be life-changing. You can find things out about your family, your kids, that can change your generations there for you. That's really cool about the open-endedness of this research.
And one of the questions that I have from the chat is also, is the information easy to access and easy to understand? You gave a great
Yeah,
example.
it's really user-friendly, for sure. So definitely the database is easy to look through. You can actually click on the charts and it'll pop up with the information there for you to explain it a little bit better. So it's very user-friendly. It has the help support on both sides, on the public side and on the Researcher Workbench itself. So there's always support available too.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have any questions in the audience for Emily?
I do. So do you have to have any particular qualifications to become a more registered user? Like you had 3 different tiers.
Yes, you do
So-
have to apply for that.
And so could someone that's just a college student apply to be able to
No.
start their own research? No? Is that your question?
No,
Have an answer to that?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Ross Ingleburn. You have to be a researcher. Okay. You have to be a researcher in order to do a research, in order to do research. And in order to conduct research, you have to go through the RLB and different measures. And if your institution has a Dura, which was presented in the presentation, you'll be able to have access to that. And with that, you'll have certain rights and responsibilities. For instance, if you're a nurse, you can't work in the nursing field unless you're licensed. Same thing like with researchers and so forth. It's different protections and different processes, procedures that you have to go to. And again, to answer your question, you have to be a researcher in order to have access. In order to have access, your institution has to have the IRB and the Dura, which was highlighted in the presentation. And to add, if you're an individual researcher, over 1,000 researchers have access to that, you will have those measures in place. I hope that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
You have any more questions up there? Emily, do you have any final words for us?
Thank you for having me and allowing me to present today.
I love how she said, I'm just a research assistant, ma'am. First of all, you gave a whole presentation and you answered the questions that were asked. So yeah, I need you to upgrade and just not think that you're just a research assistant. So thank you so much for being with us today. Okay, have y'all learned something so far? Yes, okay, y'all at home doing this, okay, good. Hopefully you have taken the pre-survey because we know that there's gonna be a post-survey at the end, but hopefully you also have realized that this is bigger than us individually, that we need everybody to participate. So we keep saying, join all of us, because that's exactly what we need you to do. I loved every single person that has stood on this podium or before this podium this afternoon, because I have realized, yes, I also registered, I'm a participant in the program. I am waiting because there's one more thing that I have to do, and I think it's the blood samples. And so we in the middle of a pandemic in space coverings. But I think that they are now able to take our blood and all that kind of stuff. So it's just one more step, because it is important to me that we can't, because like the exercise we did earlier, we were talking about the family history and the things that we just say, and we don't always use the correct terms. So I wanted to make sure that that as I get older and the generations coming after me, that we know what we're dealing with, and that we don't just find out when the doctors say there's nothing else we can do. And so I wanted to participate. I wanted to be a part of the research. I've recently been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and so this was not in my family that we know of, right? So I'm telling everybody I know, because, especially in my family, because I want us to be aware of what's going on. I also think it's important, again, that we don't just deal with stuff when the doctor says, oh, there's nothing else, and people have been, aching or dealing with something, and we have no idea what's going on. So I really encourage you, if you have not already gone to the website, if you've not already put in your name, do that. You can do it now, and I won't feel any kind of way. But I now have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Dharma, and I'm listening to my mentor, Jennifer J.J. Jones, and she is talking to me from the audience, and so when she speaks, I listen, and she is talking, and I'm like, wait, what? I'm looking at that. Okay, so can I introduce Dr.? Okay, thank you. So Dr. Dharma has a no stone left unturned philosophy to medicine, which has earned her a strong following of patients, y'all. She is the founder, owner, and now operates as medical director of Southwest Family Medicine Associates, which is a large clinical practice that provides cutting-edge medicine and research located in Central Dallas. So all you home folks, pay attention. She believes that prevention of diseases with diet and exercise is the key to good health, which led her to establish an on-site wellness center in 2014. Her dedication to medicine is represented by the multiple board positions she holds, including past president of her local chapter of the TAFP and multiple board positions at UT Southwestern. As an associate clinical faculty member at UT Southwestern, she has taught medical students for over 20 years. Y'all
making me sound old.
No, because she started at 18. What I'm gonna say is, one of the things that I really love about her bio is the importance of diet and exercise. I'm a big proponent of movement. I don't use the word exercise because that's too much of a commitment, but movement I can do. So my family, who I know is watching, y'all know I believe in the Peloton. We'll talk about that later. But I would like to introduce Dr. Dharma. Live. Y'all can't see it all at home, but let me tell you, ma'am. Okay, yes.
They are just taking it to a whole new level. All right, well, this has been so much fun. I've learned so much already, and I'm really excited to be here. So I get like the heavy hitting stuff, mental disease in the Black community. A moment of silence, please. Can we pray about this, right? Because it's just so deep, and there's just so many layers there, and there's so much complexity and history behind it. So where do you even begin? Well, my audience are college students, and as you know, college students are really affected right now with just having been through something very, very traumatic. Do we know what that was? COVID? Exactly. I mean, there is nothing more traumatic than being isolated and feeling that you have no control of what's going on. And that's why you see people acting the fool on TV and trying to ask for certain rights and then not follow rules. And, so when you see people not acting in accordance to what you think that they should or would assume that they would do, sometimes it's because they're going through something. And I know that there are probably a lot of students out there, and I am talking to you, the person that is feeling lost, overwhelmed, like maybe you can't get through the semester, maybe you think college wasn't the right solution for you, and that you are the first, and you don't think that you're going to be the one that's going to actually get to the end. You might feel like a failure. And you might feel all alone. And sometimes, yes, prayer is very, very helpful. Your church community, your pastor, your family, your friends, all of these people are resources that you can utilize to help you through this moment, okay? But then there is something that actually is a medical disease, because I think we think, oh, well, we can be strong past it. I'm just being weak. But if you understand science, just like people have sugar and that they don't have enough insulin, and so then therefore they have an imbalance and they have to be on a medicine, sometimes because your hormones, called your neurotransmitters in your brain, are off, then that is what actually is causing you to feel this way. Now, by no means is medicine the first answer, okay? We just talked about movement, and movement has shown to really make a big difference in how you feel, right? So sometimes we don't talk about that, right? We don't talk about why you can treat mental disease with movement. Now, there is actually a number. It's very precise. It's 150 minutes of movement a week. How did they come up with that number? So if you walk for 30 minutes on a Saturday, is that 150 minutes? Nope, it's not. And so they came up with this number with research. Someone sat and looked at people who were feeling anxious, depressed, and they calculated what it took for them to feel better. So when people say, oh, I did my exercise, and they did it for a week, and they did 150 minutes for a week, and then they said it didn't work, is that accurate? No, because it takes at least 3 to 6 months to really see a difference in how your hormones will slowly build up over time. So precision medicine is just that. Research is just that. It's so basic. It's saying, okay, we have a problem, and the problem is anxiety and depression. And then we have some solutions. Sometimes it's medicine. Sometimes it can be nutrition, right? Sometimes it can be sleep. Sometimes it can be movement. And what is the best solution for you? Okay, so one thing if you are struggling with anxiety and depression is exercise, movement, 150 minutes a week. The second thing that is helpful is sleep. Now, we've all taken for granted sleep. And there is nothing that is going to make you feel worse than being hungover in the morning trying to get to class, right? Because you didn't have sleep. And then you drink coffee, which is a stimulant. So you're on a downer from drinking, you're on an upper from a stimulant, and you are barely getting through the day. And then you wonder why you feel bad. But sleep is an essential part of how your body functions. And without sleep, there is no way you're going to treat your depression. So when you see your friend and they're kind of agitated and they're up all night and they're trying to study, sometimes you just need to tell them, you know what, why don't you just put this down for a second, get some sleep, and then when you wake up, you're going to be able to function at such a high level that you will get the same amount of task that you would have while you were dozing off, falling asleep, and you tried to do that for like 2-3 hours. You'll get the same amount done in 20 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, but you will accomplish your goal. But you have to pay attention to your body, right? Pay attention to your body. Your body tells you so many different things. It tells you when you are thirsty. But then what do we drink? We drink soda. Does soda quench our thirst? No, it does not. And is soda good for us? No, it is not. You know, so when we are thirsty, hydration. So I'm talking about mental disease. What does hydration have to do with mental disease? Next I'm going to say, take some castor oil. No, not really. A good poopy also makes you feel better. No, but hydration is important, right? Because, I mean, think about your body and how your skin feels, how you're looking dry, and how you just feel off. But people don't pay attention to how they actually feel on the inside. They just react, okay? And we're going to talk about mindfulness in a second, but they just react. So what I want you to do is really think about simple things when you feel bad and go through those in your mind, and that will help you see, okay, is this a real feeling of depression or anxiety that I'm having over time? Or is it just that I don't feel good today, right? So drink some water and then rest and see if that makes you feel better. Now, obviously, if you feel bad every day and are crying for 2 weeks straight and you can't sleep, you're not eating, you can't concentrate, you don't want to go out with your friends, or worse, you have thoughts of hurting yourself, or you feel like you just want to be dead, well, water is not going to help, okay? I mean, let's be clear, okay? It's really important to understand the differences from having a moment, and sometimes, unfortunately, people react on these moments. Suicide is a real thing, and mental disease, unchecked, untreated, leads to suicide. So it's really important to pay attention to your friends when they are saying crazy stuff like, I can't take this anymore, I'm just so done. You know, those are very hopeless terms, and those are cry outs for help, right? So please don't say, oh, you know, just pray about it, it'll be fine. That can be one of the solutions, but you need to direct them to people who can help them. Maybe their health coach at the school. All colleges have like clinics that you can go to for free, because college students sometimes don't know what or where to go. They don't maybe know their insurance status, and so then they can help direct you. Okay, so we talked about hydration, and then we talked about being in tune with our feelings. That word is being mindful. So sometimes I'm sure you've heard, and I don't want to say it's, you know, like white people or yoga, and, you know, you have this whole other genre of people who kind of meditate. I mean, I know what I think of when I see someone meditating. It's all the same visual images that you get, right? And meditating, I mean, I'm Indian. I don't know if y'all can see me, but, you know, it's like I envision like a monk, or, you know, someone sitting cross-legged under a tree and like going, you know, so, but that is not what meditation is. And mindfulness is a concept that is coming out, and that is really, really helpful and very easy for anyone to be able to implement in their life, and really start to feel better. So when we have anxiety and depression, Anxiety being that repetitive thought that kind of goes through your head. It's like a little hamster, it just keeps coming over and over again and you won't let it go, okay? And depression being the same hormone, the name of the hormone is called serotonin, but depression is just same imbalance, but the way that it manifests is different, where again, we talked about sleep, energy, concentration, what you like to do or don't do, and those are more signs of depression, but both of them can be treated with the same simple modalities initially. And so mindfulness, where when a thought, whether it's I wish I was dead, or I am so ugly, I'm completely worthless, I'm not going to get through this, I have failed this assignment. There's so many negative thoughts that go through everyone's head. Okay, we all have them. And when that thought goes through your head, allow it to sit and review the thought. Instead of trying to take the thought and shove it out of your head and just pretend like you didn't have it and, oh, it's a bad thought, the devil, get it out of my brain, not acknowledging it doesn't make it go away. The thought just lingers and it keeps coming back until you do something about it. So sometimes doing something about it is vomiting on someone, like going to a counselor and you just like, bleh, you just throw it out. Like you go and you just tell them all the stupid things that go through your head and then they tell you, you know what, it's okay. You're not crazy. Lots of people have those thoughts because anxiety and depression can be treated with not only movement, nutrition, but counseling, right? Counseling is one way of getting that out and allowing someone else to carry your load. Just like, I'm not going to do the Jesus thing, but somebody else is also helping carry your load, right? And so counseling allows somebody else to help carry your load. Mindfulness is another technique that you acknowledge the thought, you don't try to push it away, you let it ponder in your head, and then you say, okay, I see that I, feel that I am not worthy. I understand that sometimes when I feel bad, that thought comes through my mind. But I'm going to allow that thought to just dissipate because I know that it's not a real thought, right? Because when you're having silly things that go through your head, that they might not really be real, but you still it keeps coming back and coming back. And then the concept, and I know I'm guilty of this too as a physician, sometimes we don't empower people to realize that they do have power over their thoughts. They do have power over their feelings, right? And so, and prayer does work, but, all these things are very helpful, but if you have sugar, then sometimes you need a medicine. If you have clinical depression, so that's a big word, okay? When I am depressed, my dog died, I'm depressed. Okay, that is a English word that just means you're sad. That is not the word that should be used when we are talking about a diagnosis, a doctor diagnosis of depression. And I wish that we in medicine did not use nomenclature or words that were not scientific to describe a scientific disease. Like it should have been called serotonin deficiency. But because it's called depression or anxiety being, again, another word that I use, I was anxious to get in front of people. Not really. But, let's just pretend like I was nervous. Like, I was anxious. No, that just means it's a word, but it's not a clinical diagnosis. If you go to a doctor and they say you have anxiety, that means that you met some criteria in a book that then led us to clinically give you the diagnosis of anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorder is not, I have anxiety. And so, when we are talking about mental disease and how it affects communities of color, and I mean Black, Hispanic, Asians, minorities are not open to discussing mental disease. No one that is a minority has mental disease. It's just the cray-crays and the Karens of the world that have mental disease. I don't know. It's true because when I talk to my patients, it's very hard for them to accept that they might need help. And then when they go back home and they talk to their family, because we might have gotten to the point where they've done everything. They've exercised, they've had sleep, they've worked on their nutrition, they've done mindfulness, and none of those things have worked. And they've constantly felt bad for more than 2 weeks, for 3 to 4 months. And they now are exited out of their relationship because they couldn't function in a relationship. Their husband, is like done. They are on probation at their job because they don't get to work. They're not concentrating at work. When your life is falling apart because your hormones are off, then that is a sign that it's not just you're anxious, okay? And so at that point, then we need to consider medicine. But when they are given medicine, something that is life-saving that can help them, but they go home, right? And then someone says, you don't need that. Those doctors, they're just trying to put you on meds because they're drug dealers. Yeah, And then they talk them out of the medicine. They make them feel guilty. That's something that maybe we could all think about because at that moment, you then were part of the problem and not the solution. If you feel like they could have benefited from prayer or even a natural supplement, why don't you give it to them too? Like there's no, real where you can't be on, lemon balm, I think is really wonderful. Lavender oil is fantastic. Kava is amazing. They're all great supplements which we utilize, but in conjunction with medicine that is going to help increase their hormones for a small period of time to make them feel better. And so in tying this back all to research and the All of Us project, I think it is so important because precision medicine that really defines, the different groups of people, where they live. So, the COPE project or the COVID that they are now getting data on is a huge event that we will be able to look at the data and say, hey, during this period of time, all these people had anxiety and depression. Were we all just mental or was it because of this event, COVID? And it's going to easily show that that was the cause, So, think how amazing that is because 30 years from now, they're going to look and say, why was there so much depression during this period? The incidence rose and then that went down and it correlated directly with, the disease and whether we wore masks or not. All of that stuff. But we will be able to look and see, what happened in your environment had a direct relationship on your health. The second thing is your nutrition. I want y'all to understand that, some of us believe that natural things make a difference. And this is important, okay? We will never be able to prove that fish oil, well, actually there's a study on Vasipa now, not castor oil though, but fish oil, and a very specific kind of fish oil, not just some ones that you buy over the counter. All fish oil are not the same. But supplements like seaweed, people are taking, what's the latest one? Like silver moss or something like that? Sea moss, like everybody's on sea moss for everything. If you have erectile dysfunction, sea moss works. I do not know that is a joke, okay? So, but when you think that certain supplements, behaviors are helping you with certain health outcomes, then that is what all of us is studying is, hey, did this sea moss make a difference. There were like 50,000 people using it, and my gosh, they are all so much healthier. Why is that? So you can make a difference in whatever it is that you believe is helping you naturally by doing that. And last but not least is your genes. We are not all created equal. And because we all have different genetic backgrounds, we are going to then express different genes, therefore have different disease. So my mom and dad both have diabetes, and my grandparents have diabetes, so therefore I am going to have diabetes. Now my brother always like, oh, you're so negative, why do you have to always be like that, But that's the reality, because that's my genes, okay? So if you have a bunch of cancer, I would not just sit there and wonder, am I about to get cancer? Because those genes are real. But are the genes affected by just being born? Or are the genes then turned on by what you ate? Because there's so much poison in the bad food that we are given because it's cheap. Or were those cancer genes turned on by where you live? The environment that we live in affects whether those genes are turned on. So if you are a brother and sister and you're twins, but one lives in Detroit and is affected by that environment versus another lives in Jamaica and she doesn't have any disease, wonder what's going on there, right? So that is what precision medicine is. That is what we are learning about. We encourage everyone to consider being part of the project, because if we aren't part of the solution, then we're just part of the problem. That's it, guys. Thank you.
Don't leave too soon, Dr.
Oh, okay.
Don't leave. And I'm getting my movement on. I'm going towards that 130.
150 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you have a question? Let's go ahead and start with you here.
Hello. So I have a question. For someone who deals with clinical depression like myself, it can be difficult to even, as you know, probably get out of bed some days.
Yeah.
So my doctor keeps trying to emphasize the importance of exercising, like you said, and having a nutritious diet. But do you have any tips how to implement that when some days you're just struggling to even make it to the shower? So.
I do. I have a trainer. I know that is an easy way, and it doesn't necessarily meet everyone's, but that accountability is so helpful. I don't have it sometimes, but I am very accountable to that money, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna lose that money, so I'm gonna be there. And it's amazing how effective that is. I've had a trainer for like 3 years. That's why I look so good, no, but it makes a difference. And, it's interesting because I exercise and have a trainer. I could have a counselor, but I choose to have a trainer because it's 2 for 1. You get counseling and training all in one, copay. But sometimes people forget that, paying for something like that versus paying for counseling and medicine and then all of the other bad effects that come downstream is really so much more cost effective, And thank you for acknowledging that everyone has, something that they are working through, because so many times people will not even, it's like some, scarlet letter or something horrible that makes you less than when you struggle with something that is real that all of us struggle with. And when my trainer was like, well, you haven't lost any weight. And I was like, well, I didn't think I was trying to, because I exercise and pay for him for mental stress reduction and, just managing. Being a doctor is not something small, you know what I'm saying? So, I hope that's helpful and I can give you some tips on how to get them for much more cost effective. And I'll definitely do that. So, because everything doesn't have to be expensive. I teach people how to use YouTube, how to exercise with a friend. And that's why when they do like fat challenge classes, there's that competition. We are humans. And then we tend to be competitive and we are always accountable. So even if someone asked me to do something, if I wouldn't do it for myself, but I would do it for somebody else, right? Like we do that. And so those small things will make a difference. Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Dr. Dorman. I have a few more questions, really, really quick. What motivated you to pursue a career in medicine and research?
Oh, that's a really good question. So in medicine, I had 3 career choices. I'm Indian, Sri Lankan, you know, I could have been an engineer, lawyer, doctor, or I could have been an engineer, lawyer, or doctor. So there you have that. And I think that's what Dr. Watson was talking about, I think that was his name, is that when you have exposure and when you are, you know, have other people and they guide you, then that's what our young people need, is just that ability to know that you can reach anything you want to because they put that in your kind of vision, right? It's like a vision board. When you don't see someone who is a doctor, then you think, oh, there's no way I can be like that person. But when you see other people, and so, yeah, in our culture, I mean, literally, how many Indian doctors do you know? I know everyone in this room has an Indian doctor. If anyone does not, has never seen an Indian doctor, I would challenge them to raise their hands because it's just a cultural thing, right? And we need to do that for everybody.
Definitely a cultural thing. And lastly, Dr. Dorman, as an active researcher, what would you say to a college student thinking about going into this field?
Oh yeah, that would be amazing to have more college students be interested. I mean, first is to get some experience so that you know what you're getting into. But I loved, and that's why I asked about the All of Us project, is like the workbench, is questions. So my son goes to Brown, and I sent him the workbench information yesterday, and I said, sign up and look at it and see what information it gives you and start asking the question, you know? So we're working on some other projects to help. It's called the Invisible Woman Foundation, and it's to help Black women and trying to understand why there is such a disproportionate rate of death among Black women. And so I think looking at the All of Us project and looking at the database might be able to help us figure that out. That's the project we're working on. So that is answering the question, is like, what made me go into research and what continues to keep me in medicine is like a fundamental desire to help people and just in every way possible. And I can help more people through research than I can just individually. I get more from individually helping people one-on-one. But yeah, I think that we just need to all help each other. And so I feel like that's one way to do it.
That is amazing. So do you have any parting, encouraging words for us as we end this segment with you?
Yeah, if anything I talked about in regards to clinical depression or feeling alone, feeling depressed, resonated with you, you know, and you feel like, oh, wow, I have been feeling bad, and it has been for a long time, and I have prayed about it, and I'm doing my exercise. I want that one person to consider getting help. You know, I think that's important. There are so many people out there that are willing to help you. You do not have to be ashamed. College students really have a lot of stress on them. And I know that, that we can help you. Just come to the clinic and just be honest with someone, especially if you're having thoughts of suicide. That is like, no one ever asks their friends and family. And this is the one thing I would teach everyone today. If anyone is acting different or, you know, looking really sad, being sad, you know what I'm talking about, then ask them the question, are you having thoughts of suicide? That is not going to make them want to kill themselves. Okay, that is the most important last thing I'm going to say. If anyone is feeling sad, and you have the opportunity to just ask them that simple question. Your kids, my pet kids think I'm crazy because I'm always like, pass the catch up. Hey, have you had any thoughts of suicide? Because it's just so normal. Because when they are thinking a certain way, they can just be so reactive. Young people's brains are not developed until they are 25 years old. And I know that they think that they are grown, they can drink and do all this stuff, and they're adults, but their brains are just simply not developed. And when that developing brain hits, like problems, then sometimes the only solution that they can come up with is to just end it. And if someone had asked them, are you having thoughts of suicide? And it can just be like, oh yeah, let's go out tonight. Yesterday you were telling me you were feeling like you just were like done. Do you ever think about killing yourself? And if they're like, yeah, I do you? And you're thinking, then you can then say, it's okay that you're having these thoughts. Those thoughts don't have to then lead to you hurting yourself. Why don't we talk to someone about it, right? Because the minute you are scared to ask them the question, or you assume that they don't have that thought, because let me assure you, a lot of times people will have those thoughts of hurting themselves and no one asked them. No one cared enough to just ask them because they think it's just so far out, right? Because you've never had a thought of killing yourself, maybe. And because of that, you just don't even think about asking someone. Oh, anyway, I'm so long-winded, I'm sorry, but it's so important when you talk about mental disease and trying to really help people help not only themselves, but each other. And then my last thought is, don't be scared to ask someone if you know that they have struggled with anxiety and depression, if they've ever thought about it, or if they're actively thinking about it, and then to encourage getting help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Dorman.
My pleasure.
In the spirit of Dr. Dorman actually sharing with us, we're about to go into a 5-minute break for us to move. So this is what we're going to do. Is going to have a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back. Thank you again, Dr. Dorman. You were amazing. I got my commitment. I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to move 150 minutes a week, but we're going to go move and have a 5-minute break. Thanks.
Thank you. Love that. Have you ever had
Okay, so all your cabinets are made here?
Let me go check in to make sure.
Okay. You got that?
Yeah, and you want to do it, but like,
Just keep it put down here whenever you get there.
yeah, I kind of, yeah. But that's the
Okay, panelists are in place.
And so these are where you're like, well, but yes, that's it.
Look, I'm like, I got y'all, don't worry about it. I got to do this on Quinn night too. They're not giving you. Yes, yes, I am.
30 seconds, guys, 30 seconds. 30 seconds. MC, where's my MC? 30 seconds.
All right, how was that break? Not on?
Should be great.
I am impressed. It is dead.
You're on, right?
It is dead. Awesome, there we go. Am I on? There we are. Well, Shalandria, you did such a great job. You just took that mic out. So I don't know how I can follow you. It's great. We are back with an awesome panel. I hope you all had a break. Those of you who are virtual, I hope you had a good break. And so now we're back for this awesome Mind Over Matter panel, mental health and research panel discussion. And so I am going to turn it over to Jalil, my man, Jalil here. Say, when you finish, can I get the hat and the jacket? I see Jay say, and you have not, that you asked. So, Jalil, take it away.
I can't give you the hat and the jacket. Earlier, I did see that you asked someone for a bow tie, so it sounded like you're putting a wardrobe together. So I understand that. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Okay. I want to welcome you all to the Mind Over Matter panel conversation focusing on mental health. Mind Over Matter is a conversation that encourages people to be mentally fit and understand the resources that are readily available to them. But before we begin, I would like to give a special thank you and shout out to the All of Us Research Program for partnering with us today and doing the amazing work that they're doing. Now, like I stated earlier, my name is Jalil Thurman, CEO and founder of Yardtalk 101, and I will be moderating today's conversation. Now, joining me today, as you see, they brought the ladies out getting ready for Women's History Month. They said we're going to conclude Black History Month and get an early start to Women's History Month. And joining me today, we have mental health advocate and attorney, Jay Mathis. Jay, you want to let them know she's in the building? We have the director of Mental Health Clinic, of the Mental Health Clinic here, Dr. Stacey Alexander. We have the mental health counselor here on campus, Dr. Angela Belton. And, you know, one thing I always love about having these conversations is when we have our students joining us. And the student we have is a former SGA president. And so I definitely want to give a shout out to y'all, Chef Ms. Owens. Now, when we are facing mental health challenges, a lot of times people put them to the wayside. They don't really want to talk about them. So my first question is for you, Dr. Alexander. Why is it important to get help early?
Well, just, wait, am I on? No. There it is. But I still feel like you guys can't hear me. There we go. Thank you. Yeah. You got it. Why is it important to get help early? It's just like with any other area of healthcare. Preventing mental health care will help offset crisis moments. So if we would integrate mental health care into all aspects of our medical routine, then we would see a reduction in the crisis episodes where people understand there are certain things that you can do daily, like Dr. Norman was talking about in terms of nutrition, sleep, activity patterns that will help offset, just quite a bit of the mental health dysfunction that we're seeing today.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I think a lot of times, we're afraid to just ask for help. We're afraid to reach out for help, or even just say, "Hey, it's okay." I go to therapy myself once a month. We used to be twice a month, but I think it's just now more so from a maintenance perspective. But it's a conversation I really try to have, and it's interesting. My little sister, she's 17, and she's in therapy, and it's one of those things that I am encouraging her, and I'm proud of her because A, she's doing it at an early age. And then B, she's actually really involved with the process. And I have to explain to her, sometimes it's just maintenance. It's not necessarily that something is wrong. I think that's the stigma around mental health. It's like you go to the gym, work out, stay fit. It's just the same thing. It is the same thing. Now, in speaking of the case, Dr. Pelton, what are some of your recommendations or practices that someone can do to help improve their mental health on a consistent basis?
Let's see if this is working. Oh, perfect. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that great question. So it's kind of like going back to your first question. I always tell my clients that if you just let it sit thinking and hoping that it's going to go away on its own or put it in, hide it under the rug, that's just going to grow bigger and bigger, and it will get worse. So I always tell them, unload, let out. Because if we look at our mental health, we're like a soda can. We keep shaking and shaking that can every day. And where do those bubbles go? They have to go somewhere. And you have to give them a place. You have to give them a space. So that's why I tell them, if you have a journal, use your journal every day. If you don't have nothing to write 10 or 5 things that you're grateful for every day. Something as little as that every morning. Monitor your breathing, because when we are upset, guess what? We get short of breath. So our brain is asking us for more oxygen. So just take your 2 minutes of let in and let out. And it's something as simple. Is that it? I said, that's not going to fix all your problems, but you start developing habits. And every habit, then it will become a conscious action. So those are like the main 2 things that I always tell them. And of course, drinking water instead of sugary drinks and stuff like that, just to keep things flowing. But those are like the most important ones. Give a space to your thoughts and make sure you breathe, inhale and exhale.
I love that you brought that up. I think a lot of times we hear about breathing, right, and the importance of it. And I didn't really understand how it could help control a situation. Are you just taking time to all right, let me inhale, exhale. Just a few times, just to recalibrate, put things in perspective, and then you're able to make better decisions from that. So thank you for making that call out. Now, a lot of times right now, especially because of the pandemic, we're doing a lot of inhaling and exhaling. And so, Mantra, my next question is for you. As a student, right, managing and navigating the pandemic, how have you been able to, still show up for classes and all of that?
Well, it's definitely been a challenge. I'm not going to say that everything is perfect, but I am a true believer in God. So anytime that I go or I'm going through something, my first thing is to breathe, of course, but I always go before God and give him everything that is hindering or stopping me that could potentially affect my mental health. And it just seems easier when I give those things up or give them to God, because then my burdens feel lighter and my yoke seems easier. So I would say that in addition to, I journal, I do mental journals. Every morning, every night, I read my scripture, and I think routine definitely did help during the pandemic because my routine was off, and then once I found a new routine because of the new pandemic and, new things were happening, it definitely made things easier. In addition to affirmations, so I started my own nonprofit when I was 16. And my focus was mental health and entrepreneurship. And so when I look at myself in the morning and I'm looking in the mirror, I tell myself that I'm beautiful. I tell myself that I can do it. And I tell myself I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Man, she done took us to church on Friday. But I love that because, you touched on a couple of different things. I think we all, have our own religious beliefs and whatever the case may be. But I, like you, myself, I definitely lean on God heavy because it helps, especially being an entrepreneur, right? Like it's not for the weak. And so it's one of those spaces where you have to breathe, find some, have that power that you lean on. And so I just definitely want to say thank you for giving that. And you're right, it's all about it's life and death in the tongue. And so thank you for that. Now, Jay, that transition from college to the real world is one of those transitions that, we don't often have the conversation around it. And so for you, when it came to like landing a job and having these different things, how were you able to, manage that while battling ADHD and depression and what tips do you have?
So what I always tell people is that I went a non-traditional route. I took a gap year in between after I graduated from college because I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and that was kind of soon after I was diagnosed with clinical depression and ADHD. So I just needed to take a year off to just, have my medication calibrated, to have the appropriate doctors, and I volunteered at juvenile detention facilities because I wanted to work in the criminal justice reform arena. I volunteered for President Barack Obama at the time campaign. I volunteered for community miracle campaigns. So I just did things that I wanted to do. I built my resume. I made connections. I just took a year to kind of do, nothing. And I didn't get paid, but I got the peace that I wanted. I had the clarity that I wanted. And also, after I got back on the horse a year later, so I was a little older than some other people when I started law school, but I've always been the type of person that said, I'm going to run my own race and on my own time zone. I'm not going to put pressure on myself to do anything. Everybody has a different journey in life, and how you get there is how you get there. So even though I'm a year and a half delayed on starting this journey, I still started this journey, and that's what matters. And also, I tell people all the time, I took so many no's that I became immune to them. So it's okay to have plans. When you graduate from college, I want to do this, I want to go to this school, I want to be in this field, but if your plans do not work out the way you planned at that time, it's okay to pivot. It's okay to say, this does not mean forever, this just means not right now. So just be flexible with yourself and just give yourself that grace and that patience to say, I'm here right now in this area in life for a particular reason, and I would be in the next stage when I'm supposed to be there. And that's what really helped me transition from college to law school.
You gave a lot of gems right there. You touched on so many different things. Giving yourself grace, I think that doesn't matter if you're 15, 25, 45, 70. You have to give yourself grace in that space in order to achieve these things. You also touched on your journey, right? Everyone's journey is different. And you hear it early, but you don't really understand it until later, until you're at peace. I always tell people, you took some time off to figure things out for yourself. And, I commend you for that because a lot of people don't, right? A lot of people are afraid to do that. And I was talking to my mom the other day. She said, what, I'm going to be like you. I'm going to just be a gypsy for a year and figure life out. And I was like, all right, okay. Because in my process of entrepreneurship, I feel like you either have time or you have money. You're either using your time to make money or using your money to make time. But you don't have both until you're wealthy, right? And so I took time. I've always had money, but a couple years ago I took time to make money. And now I'm making more money than I had when I did have money. And so that's why my mom was like, I'm going to just be a gypsy, because she wants to figure it out, right? And so I commend you for doing that early on. Now, Dr. Alexander, anxiety and depression are 2 separate days. Now, what is some of the beginning steps for someone when they're trying to overcome these obstacles?
So you're talking about, right, 2 drastically different issues, right? I want to start by saying there is a difference between mental health and mental illness, and I think that's what a lot of people need to understand. So once we get to a point where you are officially diagnosed with anxiety or clinical depression, then we're saying that's a mental illness. So one of the first things that you can do when you've been diagnosed with anything is do your research. When they were talking about the research, I don't know, it's just all aligned, right? You talk about research for the program that we have today, go talk to your family members. A lot of times when you're diagnosed with something, you think you're the only person that's going through that, so you kind of isolate and try to handle it yourself. But other people may have already gone through that and didn't have a name for it. That is one of the problems in the Black community. A lot of people do not know in the Black community what anxiety looks like. They absolutely do not know. They do not know that the urges in your chest, the pressures in your chest, the sleepless nights, the overthinking, the second guessing, the imposter syndrome, all those things are anxiety. Constantly looking over at what somebody else is doing and having to control everything. That's anxiety. We don't really realize that because we think, I've had to do this in order to achieve. Like we heard all growing up, you have to do twice as good as a person who is of another shade. So then you get accustomed to that quality of life, that routine and that movement. And when you get to a place where you can, like you said, take time or use your money to settle down, your mind won't slow down. So one of the things is recognizing what anxiety looks like. And then when we were talking about, you asked that question with Dr. Dartmouth, understand that there is situational depression and there's clinical depression. When we say situational depression, we're talking about grief. We're talking about loss. We're talking about a situation that really you should feel sad. Like, right, if you weren't feeling sad, we would be concerned about you. So those are what we call situational things. Clinical depression is there is something physiologically off-centered in your body, and you can use a method of a variety of resources to recalibrate, like adjust and get back on cue. But it really depends on how much time you want to devote to it. Like when you've been diagnosed with depression, it depends on how much time do you want to take to recalibrate it and constantly recalibrate it. If you're not going to use psychotropic medications. If you use psychotropic medications, then you're looking at some, like Jay, you can attest to this. How many times do you have to go to a psychiatrist in order to get that medication adjusted? It's not a one-time visit. Do not come in here and think that we're going to be able to adjust your medication with one consultation, get you on there. Nope, you need to come back every 30 days. So you need to be ready for commitment in order to get back to a place where you feel centered.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because you really mentioned something that we don't know what it looks like. We know what blue looks like, black looks like, we know what good food look like or maybe tastes like, right? But we do not know these illnesses and what they look like. I mean, even just sitting here listening, I'm like, oh man, okay, and do I have anxiety? Because sometimes I don't sleep and I always, my mind's always racing and things of that nature, and I think sometimes we also accredit it to what we want to be in life and our successes, and maybe it's, potentially anxiety about where we want to go and how successful we want to be, and it's finding ways on the day-to-day to kind of manage that now. But I also think it doesn't help because there are stigmas around mental health in general. I think not only in our community, but I just think when you think of mental health, it's never positive. It's never a thought process. So for you, Dr. Belton, what are some things that we could do to kind of break down the stigma, especially in our community of color, around mental health?
That is a very good question, because if I can remember, I grew up full of stigmas, around my family, my culture, society. So we already born into this judgmental space. We're always thinking, oh, what is everybody going to think? Everybody's going to think I'm a loser. We're afraid to even take a step. And I grew up like that, and you think about students going through bullying and how all of these situations impact their self-esteem. So I always share with my clients that I had to overcome so much, breaking down those stigmas. Like, honestly, now in my late 40s, I can say, wow, I really had to deprogram my brain to not to care what other people say, including my family. Because sometimes they're your worst enemies. That's something that I found out in a few years back, because they turned their back on me because I made a decision that I only knew it was what's best for me. So when I tell I have seen a lot of clients that they come with that, actually that's their problem. How do I break this to my family? How am I going to not to feel guilty, be myself? And I don't think there's nothing worse in this world than to leave cage, not to feel free to be yourself. And you can see most of the cases of suicide are because of that, because somebody didn't accept you and you were afraid. So one of the big things is when you come to therapy is, are you willing to start speaking up for yourself? Are you willing to start being honest with yourself and not to care what others are going to say and think about you? Because are they paying your rent? Are they providing for you in any way? Are they an asset to your life or a liability? And if when you put those things in perspective, you're like, man, I can't believe I am caring about what this person say. Because I tell them, I'm doing exercise with them. Opinions are just like a belly button. Everybody has one, and nobody cares, You have one, they have one, and with my children, I have this conversation a lot. Somebody's opinion never makes it your truth. You make your own truth. You may listen to people's advice and opinions, and then you decide, but you're basically the one who drive that ship. You're the one who's driving the boat. So I think that's kind of like what can explain better to my clients and all of you.
Yeah, now, you touched on a couple of different things too that I want to call out. Being happy, right? Like making decisions for you. I think that's something that, growing up, I'll be 30 this coming April, and over the last 30 years, from what I come from, let's say 20, right? Because I probably don't remember when I was born, right? You see different things growing up, right? And you don't realize that they fall in the lines of some of these categories. And, your parents, they made certain decisions, did whatever they had to do, and they battle with these things today, right? And so I always look at my parents and older family members, whatever, and I just don't want that life. It's not that they have a bad life, they have excellent lives. I had a great life growing up. However, I don't live in fear, right? I won't live in fear. I'm going to do what makes me happy, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, right? And I think when you start to make those decisions, it changes how you feel about yourself. It changes a lot of things, but I think it also starts to rub off on those that are around you, right? So, when I talk to my mom or when I talk to my dad about, taking leaps of faith and going after what I want to do with my life, these aren't conversations that their parents were having with them or their siblings were having with them. And so now it starts to rub off. So when we talk about like mental health and the different stigmas that are there, when I can say, well, I go to therapy, and I encourage my best friends to go to therapy. And I always say, well, this is how it's helped me. Now, I'm not going to force it on you because you're an adult. I'm talking, whatever, you make your own decisions. It's your life. And I think another way to attack those stigmas is when we can give positive stories and positive affirmations about how something has helped me. It's just like when somebody got a trainer. Oh yeah, hey, girl, went to her, I lost 15, 20, and she got me ready for my birthday. Now, the next person's gonna go, oh, well, I got a birthday trip coming up in about 6 months. And then now it does that. And so I even had a friend of mine that said, hey, if you get this partnership with an organization, I'll go to therapy. And I got the partnership, and so he goes to therapy. And it's one of the best decisions that he's ever made, so a lot of time. And so it's definitely how you start doing that, is making it okay, right? And then sharing it like we share everything else, right? Now, when you transition, and you talked about the transition, Jade, but you also, as an attorney, that work-life balance can be extremely, extremely complicated. So I'm gonna start with you from that perspective, and then I'm gonna come back to you from the student perspective. But Jade, how have you been able to develop a work-life balance, and why is that important?
So I honestly had to learn the hard way. My first 2 years starting off as an attorney, I was a prosecutor, which is a very high-stress job. Probably the most stressful attorney position I think you can have in that field. And I would stay in the office around the clock, 12, 15 hours, and then I actually had a burnout and kind of a meltdown internally. It did not make its way into the courtroom, but I felt it coming, and I felt a Britney Spears moment coming when I was in my office one day. And I honestly just told my HR, I am not doing well, and I need to go on sabbatical. Because if I look at one more file, one more 3-year-old that was molested by their grandfather, or one more bullet wound to someone's head, and I already deal with depression and all these other, elements internally, and then I have to come here and deal with it, I'm not gonna make it. So I took a 3-month sabbatical. I didn't care about the pay. I just said, I have to go get myself well. And I learned at that moment, like even my colleagues, when they found out, my fellow attorneys, I thought that some of them were gonna look at me like I was weak or kind of judge me because, that's a high functioning field. But they actually came to me, a lot of them in private, and said, I commend you for doing that. You are brave. I wish that's something I could have done years ago, is to let everyone know that you're not okay. And that's something that, just always stuck with me. And I tell people all the time, it's okay not to be okay all the time. But what you should do too is that I learned at that moment, it's okay to let people know when you're not functioning at your full capacity. Because my job, whatever your job is at that moment, you're hired to do that job. My job was to pursue justice on behalf of the victims in the state of Maryland. I can't do that when I'm sad. I can't do that when I'm burnt out. I can't do that. I cannot pour from an empty cup. So that's something that I learned, and I took a break. So, and when I came back, I felt so much better. But the overall lesson that I learned from that is that pay attention to your body, pay attention to your feelings, pay attention to what you're taking in, your emotions, and not only pay attention, make an intentional effort to do something about it and tell other people, because people can't help you if you don't tell them. They were able to send me to outpatient therapy. My parents were able to fly in and stay with me for a few weeks because I was living out of town in a different state. So people were actually able to love on me and help me and give me the help that I needed. But if I didn't say anything, then that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I commend you for saying something, because that's the first step. A lot of people are afraid, like they said, just to say something, to speak up. I think a lot of times it's interesting because I think I was watching something on Instagram, or I heard someone say something previously in a conversation like this, and they were saying, when you're crying as a kid, sometimes the first reaction is, shut up, why are you crying?
Right.
Or like, stop crying. Versus, well, why are you crying? What is making you cry? What is making you feel this way? And I think a lot of times because of those, and it's simple, right? But it's our parents seeing their parents do it, their parents seeing their parents do it, and it's just suppressed our feelings to where we didn't feel like they were okay. And I think that's what ends up happening when you start thinking long-term and from a bigger perspective. Now, my question for you is the same, but from a student's perspective, how have you been able to create a work-life balance for you? Former HCA president, still a student, doing your best to excel, still have a social life on campus. How have you been able to have that balance?
Absolutely. Sorry, y'all. I think for me, I speak for the young people who grew up in a single parent home. So I've never had the privilege to just fully be a student. I've been working since I was 13 years old, full-time job. I am a director at my job now. I'm only 22, so I've never had a work-life balance. But what I did do was prioritize. I learned the power of prioritizing because at the end of the day, I am breaking generational curses for my family. So I understand the power. Yes, I'm period. So I understand the power of sacrificing my now for my later curses at all the time. So I don't want to tell whoever the young people are listening, like, you got to choose one or the other, because when you are the first in your family to do things, you have to make a sacrifice. So I think what I do now is I do take my Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. I do that. I have to do that. And I think in addition to that, I also surround myself with other like-minded individuals who are going through the same thing. I think sometimes when you are a student and trying to be the best version of yourself, LOL, you don't really get to see other people who are your age doing those things. And I think, too, taking advantage of mental health services. I think that was one of my biggest support systems, amen, during the time of the pandemic and just being a student, because you feel alone. Like, you feel alone. You feel like, oh my goodness, how can I go through all this 18 hours of school, full-time job, on my own apartment, gotta pay rent, gotta pay light bill, like life hits you. And then still have to be a good student for my student body and let them know that you still have to come to school and dress code or make sure that your grades are together. So I think the power was, for me, was prioritizing.
Prioritizing is key. And I don't think people really give the pen and paper probably the respect that the pen and paper deserves. I'm a firm believer in, we have all this new technology, which is great. I'm old school when it comes to, I got a planner, I got to write in my planner, I got to cross it off in my planner. I take an old piece of mail, right on the back of the mail, but it helps, I think, when you prioritize to put everything in front of you, right? A lot of times it's one thing to think it, but it's when you can take it from your head, put it on the paper, and see it. Now you can plan out, okay, I can do this, I can do that. And then as you start doing that, it's like your head might have felt like a hot air balloon, but it starts to deflate little by little by little, in which you're able to achieve these things. So thank you for calling out prioritizing. Now, Dr. Belton, a lot of times, and I'm sure Lamontia has felt this when you want to help your friends, right? And you want to be there for your friends. I mean, we're always trying to be there for our friends. We love, care about them, especially when you leave home. You don't really have necessarily family. Your friends now become like your new family. From your perspective, what can we do to help a friend when they may be experiencing a crisis?
That is so common, especially in our college setting, because we constantly telling our students, watch out for your friends. You know them better than anybody else. You live with them, you're their roommates, and you see people in the hall. Don't ignore the signs. And they have done such a great job in these past years. They have really amazed us because they say, Ms. Belton, what do I do? Just give them our number, give them our cell phone number. They can text us, call us, anything, or just bring them. We are right there by the cafeteria, so it just could be, let's go get some breakfast, or let's go get some lunch, dinner, whatever. And you have, hey, the mental health office is open. Let's stop by. And honestly, students listen a lot to their friends. So if you have a good friend that makes a good influence in your life, that's going to make a difference, for them. So we always tell the students, pay attention to your surroundings, because there's a lot of people crying out for help, but they do it in such a way that they think like, oh, they don't want to be bothered. No, they want to be bothered. They want somebody to ask them, are you okay? What's wrong? Why you haven't come out of your room in 3 days? What's going on with you? They love that because sometimes it's attention. Are they going to notice me? I could die today. Nobody's going to even know. And that's what they're trying to prove. So for those situations, I always tell my students, my clients, be watching for those signs. Now, if you are on the other spectrum, that you're the one who are sitting there and you want somebody to notice you, we tell them, I know it's hard, but you have to ask for help. And obviously, people always want to leave traces everywhere. Sometimes it's on social media. It could be a sad post, a sad story, and that's how you can catch them. It could be a simple phrase that's like, life is so worthless. It's a simple statement, but that can catch somebody's attention. So don't be afraid to speak up, because you're not the only one going through it, and there's people out there ready to help.
Can I add one more?
Yeah,
I
please.
absolutely love that. And even my closest friends are trained now that if I don't answer the phone within a day or two, they come and knock at my door and come pull me out, because they know what's probably going on. So I love that you said that. So if you have friends and sometimes they're kind of battling with something, or you think they're battling with something, my friends literally will come knock at the door and they're like, just text me and let me know that you're okay. But generally I will open it and I will go out with them. But that's what I love that you said that. Just pay attention to your friends and their patterns, or if they already have an underlying condition, do not take no for an answer, because mine's down.
And I laugh at their reactions, because when I get them in the office, I said, so why are you here? my friend outside, she's so annoying. So I just came out here just to shut her up. I'm like, great.
But to also add to that, we have to be really transparent and honest in saying that kids too, young adults, emerging adults, they don't take stuff seriously enough because everything is flashing. Social media is flashing. It's a 3-second, 7-second video. It's not funny when somebody is struggling. It's not a joke. Don't take videos, don't send text messages, don't talk about them. Get them some help. That could be the difference between life and death. So definitely taking it seriously when you hear, like we had a presentation, I think, where we went over some of the things you may hear or see your friends do. We actually gave them specific examples. If you see or hear these things, just do a group text with us. Like whatever you need to do to connect them with us, do it.
Yeah, I love that because one, you're talking about, I think the culture that you guys have built here on campus and with you all is that it's okay, we're open arms, and that's what we need, number one, because your story is amazing, right? Because that happens a lot of times. I'm just here because my mama told me I have to be here, so what's up? And so now it's to hear the fact that students are doing that for each other is amazing, and you guys are all hit on something that's important, is when you hear those things, you have to take it seriously. Right? A lot of times I think we either A, blow it off, right? We've heard it a few times and we may blow it off. Or B, we don't really think they're being serious, or it's a cry for attention. Like it's always these negative things versus, you know what, let me make sure you're okay, right? That should be like the first reaction versus all the other ones. Again, at that time, it's like, dang, I wish, now we're wishing we would have did things differently to make sure they're okay. Now, like I was saying, you mentioned something, social media. Right? And so this is definitely a question for all of you when we're talking about social media, but we'll start with you. Do you, feel like social media has a positive or negative impact, an effect? And then B, what can we do to keep social media from having a negative impact on our mental health?
So this is how I explain social media to my mother-in-law. She's probably close to 80. And I said, it's like your neighborhood. You have your front door. You can allow who you want and who you don't want in. You have the ability to control it. It's the same way with our feeds. We allow things on our feed by paying attention to them, liking, sharing, or what have you, how much time we spend on that video. So if you have allowed negativity onto your social media feed, it's going to have a negative impact on you. If you're more selective about what you're exposed to, meditation, healthy eating habits, positive people, then it will have a positive impact. So it's not the tool, it's what you do with the tool that determines if it's negative or positive for you.
Anyone else want to chime in?
So anyone who knows me knows that I am the queen of deactivation and the block button. I will be on social media and then I will disappear for a year and then I will be back on and I will disappear for 6 months and I will delete my page fully. Now I just got back on, so I have to rebuild all my followers, but I do not care. Like I said, I am one of those people, I run my own race, I live in my own world, and I have to do that intentionally, knowing that I have a more sensitive spirit, knowing that I have an underlying condition that is more, it makes me just get more receptive to anything that comes in that's negative. And it doesn't even have to be negative. What I was telling people is I deactivated the last time when we had, I believe it was last summer, when all of the Black Lives Matter movement, the police officers were killing all of these innocent men, and all of that was on the feed. And then everything that was going on in Capitol Hill was on the feed. And I was taking in all of this information. And one thing I'm big on is taking inventory of how I feel before something, during something, and after something. And I was noticing that I was just in a funk. I couldn't figure out why. And I was like, you know what, how about you stop watching the news? So please don't judge me, but I haven't seen the news in almost a year. And I logged off of social media for almost a year. I just came back. But I felt so much better and so much more peaceful. And then I kind of drew a connection that that's what it was. It was what I was looking at. Yeah, it was people's facade of this, that false comparison of something that you think is real that's probably not. You're comparing yourself to it, and it's just heavy. So if you deal with a mental illness, underlying mental illness, that can just trigger you over the top. And it doesn't have to be something that's just negative. It can just be something that's heavy to you and you can't move. So just take an inventory. But I absolutely I am not a social media person. I do it because I have to, because of my branding, but for that, I would not be on social media.
So for me, I believe, okay, sorry, my generation, I love y'all, don't be mad at me. But I think our generation is going through what my spiritual father would call identity crisis. So I think a lot of people are on social media searching for identity, and because they don't know who they are and they're not rooted, ooh, I'm sorry. Look at God, I don't know he's showing out. I think because they're not rooted in something stronger than themselves, they search for those answers via social media or via what looks good and isn't substance enough to be able to be what it really is. Because we all can portray a nice car, a nice house, a whole lot of money on social media. They only got 2 cents in our bank account. Like, that's not cute. So I think for me, what I learned, my mom was always, when I was younger, I couldn't have a Facebook, I couldn't have an Instagram. It was read a book, write, do something productive to help your future be great. And so I think a lot of students get on social media and then they are searching for themselves to fit a certain image. So I think to disrupt that, what we need to do is, one, in our education system, start teaching our young people who they are initially, so that when they come into the world of trials and tribulations and social media, they then won't be easily moved or uprooted. I like that group, y'all. They won't be easily uprooted from who they are supposed to be.
And they have covered everything so beautifully that it's just very little for me to add. But my 2 cents on social media is like a necessary evil. There's a lot of good things that come out of it, especially marketing, advertising. We need that for our businesses. But however, it's kind of like another area of our lives that if we lack discipline or self-control, we're gonna act exactly the same as if we're not disciplined with our eating, if we're not disciplined with our exercise, or any other area of our lives. So we can control what the society is gonna throw at us. Every day is something new being developed, and we as human beings, we just adjust to it as we dive into it, and just do it the best way possible for our advantage. But if we see that we are becoming addicted to that scrolling, we need to get on a social media diet, just be strong enough to say, hey, I'm spending too much time, I'm gonna put my time limits, adjust my settings, and just like I control my eating, my drinking, my whatever, we have to use the same for social media, because social media activates all those chemicals and hormones in our brain. So we get triggered very easily. And on top of that, social media, what I have read about is that it's impossible to escape the thought of comparing ourselves to others. And that immediately brings us down. And that's why we have to be mindful and conscious. What are we looking at? And not just social media, but any kind of platform in general.
Yeah, I think discipline was the word right there. I think discipline, you need discipline in any aspect of your life just to have success, whether it's trying to save money, whether it's being in the gym, whatever it is, you gotta have discipline. I've been trying to, slim up another 20 and hit the gym a little bit. And my trainer be like, man, you gotta stay away from the fried foods. It gets so tough. Because I love the fried chicken. So, the sweets, I got a sweet tooth, it's crazy, but you have to have a discipline because you have a goal in mind, right? And so those are different things. Now, appreciate those call outs on how we can be proactive. Jay, how can people be proactive for their mental health, and how also can they encourage their families and friends to be proactive as well?
So I think one way that you can be proactive yourself is similar to how I received my diagnosis. I was in college, and I was about 20 years old, and I was noticing that things weren't as they were before. I was sleeping all day. When I was waking up, I still didn't feel well. My grades were starting to decline. I was in a dark house all of the time. And I noticed that there was a shift, and I went and said something to my father, and that's when he recommended that I go see a doctor, and that's when the process was started, and I received my diagnosis. But I was, like I said, I was pretty young. I was 20 years old, but I noticed, so paying attention to myself and what my norm was, that I just didn't feel well. So number one, I think paying attention to yourself, your patterns, your thoughts, and if something changes, your grades at school, just really being in tune with yourself is key, number one. Number two, going to go seek help when you see something is off, it's off kilter, whether that's a family member, someone at church, someone at your university, being vulnerable enough to tell someone that can get you help. And another thing is, which is why I am so happy to be a part of the All of Us research program, is because research, data, knowing information is power, right? Information is key. When I started my medication process, and this was over a decade ago, it had so many trials and errors, and it was up and down, up and down. It's why I don't work with my body chemistry. However, I didn't notice until after I was telling one of my close family members that I was having this issue with finding a proper medication, is that I wasn't the only one in my family who had this diagnosis, but because a lot of times Black families don't like to talk about these diagnoses or similar diagnoses, they don't say anything to you. So when I mentioned that to my family member and they said, oh, well, such and such has it as well, and maybe you could talk to them and see what medication they take. And then my doctor was like, yeah, we can try that, because sometimes that's how medication works. If it's genetic and hereditary, what works for this family member may work for you as well. And that did actually help. So I think having that information and that knowledge, even right now with precision medicine, that could have cut down half of my time in struggling for 2 years to find something that fit my body chemistry, and made me a fully functioning person that I am now. So I think number one, like I said, paying attention to yourself, how you feel, stepping out to tell someone else, and just doing your research, your knowledge, and telling other people, telling your family members, this is what's going on, because a lot of times these are going to be hereditary.
Jalil, I'm gonna add to that from a parent's perspective. We have two in a bonus that they're adult children, but we have a debit card on file that they can use at any time for therapy. No questions asked, just put that credit card on file, debit card, put that debit card on file with your provider. And you can have counseling at any time, so they don't have to tell us anything.
I love that. Y'all gotta make some noise for that one. Because we need that, right? Like, these are resources that you gotta share that with the community, what y'all doing, because, I think, when I was in school at Virginia State, I didn't know there were resources that were on campus, and a lot of times, like while I was at school, like my parents were going through a separation. Like, I'll never forget, it's crazy because I think parents don't help sometimes because they hide things. And I think a lot of times they just need to have a conversation, let's talk about it, and let's move forward. And I'll never forget, so senior year in high school, graduating, and, getting ready to go to school, and cleaning out my room, going, packing what I need, right? Because I'm like, I'm gonna be back. My mom is like, yo, really clean your drawers, like get everything you need. But I'm very meticulous, right? So when something is off, I'm like, what you mean? Like, she's saying certain things. So I asked her, I said, hey, y'all selling the house? She's like, no. I said, okay. Somebody gonna be in my room? She like, nah. I'm like, so nah. So of course parents try to smooth. No, I just want to make sure, you got everything. So I ain't think nothing of it, right? Because I was also raised that your parents aren't liars, right? And so I'm like, okay, cool. They don't tell stories. Whatever they say is true. So
She wasn't ready. She wasn't ready.
No, she wasn't, right? And so when my first week of school, Virginia State's far. I think a lot of times, HBCU students are coming from far, right? You have those that are local within the state, but a lot of times because HBCUs aren't throughout all 50 states, like predominantly white institutions, we're traveling. Virginia State is about 800 and something miles. I've driven. That's how I know. Okay. And I'll never forget the call I got. Hey, son, we putting the house up for rent. Me and your dad, we're gonna separate. What you mean? You just told me 2 weeks ago everything was cool, and I didn't talk to them for like 2 months. Like, I'm in school, so now I'm on an honor scholarship. I have to. My dad told me, I want you to graduate magna cum laude. Okay, cool. So I'm trying to start off on that and navigate life and figure out going from Chicago to Petersburg, Virginia, which I don't know if any of y'all been to Petersburg, Virginia, but it ain't nothing out there. We in Texas. Anybody been to Marshall, Texas? Hey, like, I ain't trying to talk about your town. Now, I'd have been to Marshall. Now, that's
Don't say
like,
nothing bad about
I'm
Marsha.
not gonna say nothing bad about Marsha. I love Marsha. But it's like going from Dallas, Houston to Marsha, Texas, all right? And so, it was just one of those things that it was an adjustment and I didn't know how to adjust. And so I bottled everything inside. It just didn't, I literally wasn't who I should have been. Like I would go home and when I went home, I wasn't talking to my parents. Like, what we talking for? Like, there's nothing to talk about. Like, I missed my plane back to Virginia, didn't care. I was like, y'all gonna get it back to school anyway. So, but it does these things to you out of frustration, out of, being just upset and depressed, or whatever the case may be. And you don't even realize these are things. And as a student, I just wish I could have had someone to talk to, someone to get these things out. And so, Dr. Alexander, what are some of the resources that you all have here on campus that students should be aware of?
Yeah, I applaud Dr. Sorrell's, President Sorrell's vision because it started about 6 or 7 years ago. We partnered with UT Southwestern, and they were providing psychiatric services, and they expanded it because they realized that the students were getting the academic and the workplace tools that they needed, but they were still having difficulty with actually matriculating through the program. And they realized that it was because there were some emotional difficulties that were occurring. A lot of our students, more than 80%, have a history of trauma, but they didn't realize they had a history of trauma. You would ask them, do you have a history of trauma? No, I do not. Okay, so have you ever seen anyone shot? Well, yeah. Have your parents ever had an argument in front of you? Well, yeah. Has anybody, died at your house or something like that? And they're like, yes, like that's trauma. So what we do with every incoming student that comes to Paul Quinn, we do a full battery of assessments. And through those assessments, we have a baseline for their functioning. And at that point in time, they can get a direct referral to the counseling center to start counseling immediately, like during their summer programming. As well, we do a full campus-wide orientation with every student. And in that orientation, we give out our cell phone numbers. We and Ms. Belton and Dr. Moore from UT Southwestern, who's a psychiatrist. So we provide the counseling services, and then they can have a psychiatrist that they can go to on campus. But we give them our cell phone numbers. That is like an HBCU culture. I'm very well aware of that now. But they can text or call us at any time. But I do it at the time of orientation for 2 reasons. Don't you do? No, okay. But one, I want them to automatically have that phone number saved. Like you can contact me immediately. But as well, I now have their contact information. So if they text me something cryptic in the middle of the night, like I'm gonna kill myself, I already know who it is, even though you don't want me to tell your name because you text me your name and number at the beginning of the semester. Yeah. I don't erase anything. So we're very open on campus. The office is right at the end of the hall. They have to go by our office to get to the cafeteria. So we're very accessible to them, and we offer in-person counseling and virtual counseling for them at absolutely no charge. Even the psychiatric services are no charge as long as they're enrolled in campus.
Yeah, please, yeah. I'm not gonna keep everybody. Y'all.
No, I'm sorry. I just want to say I go to the best HBCU in the world. I just want to say that because, I mean, it's so hard to find a school, like even in my high school, just to know that I never thought about even going to counseling or therapy until I became a Quinn. So I want to just give a kudos to President Sorrell and Dr. Alexander and Ms. Belton, because if it had not been for them, I probably wouldn't be so conscious about my mental health as I am, or knowing to have boundaries and when to take breaks. I just want to say thank you for that, because it really changed my life going to mental health services.
Well, that's beautiful. I was going to say, I don't get students feel ashamed or embarrassed about taking those resources or getting that help. That is the only thing that helped me. And when I was in college a while back, it was called the Office of Accommodations. But the Office of Accommodations is the only reason that I graduated from college. And the Office of Accommodations is the only reason I graduated from law school, because I was in there weekly, because the therapists in there, the deans in there, they were giving me hands-on support. We were texting, they were emailing. Those are the only reasons that I made it out, because I would not have. A lot of people didn't take advantage of those accommodations because they were embarrassed. But had I not, I would not be an attorney today.
Yeah. And one more thing that we add, I know Dr. Alexander touched on that, but it's now after the pandemic, with virtual and phone call, all they literally have to do is text. If we can schedule an appointment, call, video, whatever. So really, there's no excuse. I don't feel good. I want to talk to someone. It's at their fingertips. So that has increased a lot after the pandemic, and we're just so grateful that they're using the resources.
I am too, because, you know, you're creating a new habit, right? Like you're creating a pattern, a routine of, you know, when I'm not okay, it's okay. I can text it and say something. Or when I'm not okay, I can make a phone call and say something. From you all's perspective, how has the energy, the morale rather on campus changed and increased by you all providing these services that are readily available for students?
We were going at such a pace pre-COVID that we had to get a telehealth service because the students were coming so much. We kept hiring interns and everything. And I want to tell this really funny story about destigmatizing mental health. We had two big guys ended up in the office at the same time. And of course, we're always trying to maintain confidentiality with the students, right? So one walked in, and he's like, man, what you doing here? And he's like, man, I'm coming to counseling. He's like, that's what's up. You know, and it was just like, we were like, this is what it's about, right? This is what it's about. There's no stigma attached to it because we make sure we're by our side stairwell, so you can just dart down the stairs if you want to. They come out, no, it's your turn. You need to go in there and talk to somebody. Yeah. So the energy around it was magnificent pre-COVID, and we're looking forward to getting back to that. The challenges we've had during the pandemic is the virtual space. Because a lot of our students are like Montreal. They are working full time. They are taking care of other people, or they have such a powerful role in the family that when you put them back into that system, they kind of devolve back to what they try to run from or evolve from. And so when you put them back in that environment, you're talking about all of these things that we said will help you feel better, but they go back into the pressures of that environment, then you are going to see a decrease in their mood, a decrease in their motivation. So the challenge is being just show up. Yeah. And the other thing about counseling is that it's not just about crisis moments. We also talk to the students about handling the emotionality of success. Yeah. This girl is achieving all of success. A lot of students on campus are achieving a lot of success, but no one has talked to them about how to handle that success. Yeah. Right? We're giving them the academic tools. We're telling them what they need to do. Go over here to this job. Go talk to this job. But at the end of the day, when you're suffering from anxiety, nobody's going to talk to you about how to handle it. You're going to keep moving up. You're like, I love Laundry because she is me. Like, I was a single parent. I'm not a single parent. I ain't got no kids. I was from a single parent household. Yes. And been working since I was 12 and 13. So when I got to college and just like collapsed, I just called my dad screaming in the phone. But nobody said go to counseling. Nobody said go to counseling. They were just like, well, you might need to come on about this school. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? So the emotionality of success is also something that we talk to the students about, and handling all of these goals that you have in place. What's going to happen when you get it? How are you going to handle it? The anxiety, the sadness, because it is sad when everybody else is partying and you can't. I got homework. How do you handle it? Being accountable, being responsible, having that discipline. You can get overwhelmed. So it's not just about the depression. It's other things that you can talk about in counseling that will help you in your life.
Yeah.
I think even from the student's perspective, going to the mental health services allow us to be accountable to our peers. Because it teaches us how to, I'm sorry, I cannot breathe. It teaches us how to be a friend, I think, too, because imagine me, I was going to counseling and then now I have a friend who needs to go to counseling. So now it teaches me how to be emotional and sympathetic to her. Like, are you okay? Do you need anything? And I think those little things just help grow the culture that they're already creating for us.
Yeah, I have to agree.
I was just going to say that for my experience when I came in, the students were very shy at first. And they were like, who are you? Who are you? You know? But the more we made ourselves noticeable, we were always in the cafeteria, making ourselves present in different environments. And, oh, by the way, this is Dr. Alexander and Ms. Belton. They're here just to say hello. So I guess we started to normalizing mental health. And we had some posters around with celebrities, like The Rock, for example, and he's like in the background, bipolar or depression, and they're like, oh wow, this is me too. You know, I don't have to be tough and I don't have to hide behind this mask. So that unmasking and making mental health normal again on campus, you know, just, I think it was a big barrier that we were able to break. Till this day, we're still working on it because we get new generations every semester.
Yeah, there was a campaign we did, the face of mental health, and we had celebrities get in. The Rock wasn't bipolar, he was depression. But we had Martin Lawrence, Chris Brown, a lot of the celebrities, so much so that the students thought we were having a concert on campus. We're not having a concert. But we had over 200 posters. They all disappeared. Like the students just snatched those posters down, and we were like, that's fine. We were okay with that. But it was part of destigmatizing mental health.
You know, but I think in the space that I work in, you know, within the HBCU space, you know, I always try to acknowledge those notable alums that went to HBCUs, right? Because there's always the conversation about, you know, having success at an HBCU, can't go to the HBCU be successful. And so I love the fact that you all took that approach, because these are people that people idolize, that they may look up to, aspire to be like. And we always think that they're okay because when the camera's rolling, you know, they are, hey, how you doing? You know, and then, but when the camera's off, they're like, man, you know, but you don't see their life when the camera's off. You only see their life when the camera's on. And so to be able to bring attention and say, hey, these are people that you get to, okay, hey, this person does this person does that, and they've been able to overcome. So I really want to commend you all for doing that. The culture that you guys have created here is amazing. You know, just from, you know, someone as a HBCU alum, a supporter of HBCUs, and just to hear what you all are doing on campus, I really want to commend you all for that, because that's amazing. Now, I would like to open it up for some question and answers from the audience, or anyone that might be tuning in virtually. If they have any questions, if you're able to see that. Do we have any questions? Yes. Oh, wait. Okay, we took all the mics. No, yeah, they're gonna need a mic, so I got it. I get into it.
This question is for Jay, because I know that you're working with the All of Us Research Program, and, you know, we're working with the All of Us Research Program. I know that we are really trying to open up the eyes and the knowledge to our collegians. So what would you say to a collegiate who is hesitant about joining the All of Us Research Program?
What I would say is that it may sound cliche, but the students or the kids or you all are really our future. And back in our parents' days or grandparents' days, it was so stigmatized and it's something we could not talk about. But now, thank God for this generation and social media, for that aspect of it, is that we're humanizing mental health. We're putting a face to mental health. However, we want to start putting treatment to those diagnoses as well. We want to start putting proper medication, and treatment could look like a plethora of things. It could be therapy. It could be, for me, it was medication and therapy, and that's the part that a lot of people don't like to talk about when it comes to mental illness, is the medication portion, especially in our community. We'll talk about medicine for diabetes and high blood pressure and hypertension and cancer and asthma and everything else, but we will not talk about medication for mental illness. And to me, it shouldn't be treated any differently. It's the only reason I'm functioning now. So programs like the All of Us Research Program, they are looking into cures for particular precision medicine for your body chemistry. As I said, it took me so long, but it doesn't even have to be you with the diagnosis if you're a college student. It could be your mother, it could be your little brother, but you want them to be treated as well, right? And you don't want their treatment to take 3, 4, 5 years. You don't want them to have to go through the Department of Correction like I saw when I was a prosecutor. 30% of the people detained have an undiagnosed or diagnosed mental health if untreated. Yeah, and they should be getting medication, but however, they're in jail because they have nowhere else to put them. The government in whatever jurisdiction has nowhere else to put them. It doesn't have the resources. So even if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for your community. Like, we want you to have treatments and we want you to have cures, but some of the treatments are going to look different for each person. You have a different body chemistry. We're all different demographics. So treatment for an African American could be different from someone who's a 60-year-old Caucasian male. So we just want to make sure. That's why I think it's so important to sign up and to let your family and friends know to be one of the participants, because you're doing this for yourself, you're doing this for your community, so we all can be at an even playing field with everyone else.
Thank you. I have a question. Well, we see what else we have for artists. I have a sister. That's my dog. But she's at a weird age. I think she's 17, and so it's always difficult because I'm going on 30, right? And so I have a different perspective. Like, we're siblings, so I try to be a sibling, but it's kind of hard at times. And she's been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. For someone that has a family member, right, or someone that is such a large gap, how can we show up for our younger siblings, our younger family members, to where it's not overbearing, it's not coming from like a parental voice, but just hey man, I care about you. I look like, how can we do that?
We have a situation with 2 boys and a girl, and my son would just text his little sister, "Hey, big kid," even though she's grown, because that's like their love language, right? I just can call you and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" Because she's like, "Don't talk to me." But if you say, "Hey, big kid," then it's like a open door that I can say anything. But it is being there, like we said, they repeatedly. Even if you feel like you are overburdening them, you may take a step back, but then you come right back in, just to say, "I'm always here. I'm always here on any level." About like we've done with ours, just put that card on file. If you need counseling, that's it, no questions asked, right? She's 17, so there's still some legal situations that you have to be concerned about. But what you're doing now is setting the stage for her that she can come talk to you about anything, because that's one of the reasons why we don't call for help, because we're like, "Oh, you're gonna be mad at me if I call." Now, my daughter, she'll call and say, "Can I cry?" Yes, you can cry. But in her mind, she thinks, "I'm grown, so I can't cry anymore." Yes, you can cry. "Can I get in bed with you?" Yes, you can get in bed with me, right? If that's what you need to do, that's just what you need to do. And I think what we do, we figure that somebody is old enough, like you said, she's 17, she's at weird age, because of course she thinks she's grown. So she's at that age, but you can still go in there and say, "I still want to hear." Somebody texted me the other day and said, "How are you moving?" I'm like, "Moving? What do you mean?" Yeah, and she texted back, she said, "How are you feeling, dear?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm in a hard place." It was just like, I get it now, right? So it's just finding that right terminology to connect with them. And when you do, you connect. And you may even have to change it the next time you reach out to them. But being patient enough to actually reveal to them that you're there is the most important thing.
And I want to add a little piece. Most of them, when I particularly was a prosecutor or volunteering in the community, the majority of the people who will come, I was a career day guru, that were come up to me were parents, because the children wouldn't talk to them, but the children will come talk to me. A lot of the times, if you can find somebody who has a similar diagnosis, they will talk to them. Or you can give them my information, I'll get to you, but they'll talk to someone who's going through it or who's been through it. That's what I've noticed 85% of the time. They will not talk to anyone else, but they will talk to me about it, will tell me more stuff, and they will tell their parents. Because they know I know what it feels like, and I won't judge them, and I can still answer them.
I have a 17-year-old sister too. So I definitely understand the weird age thing, because I'm like, girl. But what I've learned is there is power in our voices, literally. Like the power of the tone, the power of the delivery. And just like Dr. Alexander said, like for her daughter to be comfortable enough to say, "Can I cry?" or "Get into lay in the bed with me," I think like just even the tone of your voice was soothing to me. Like, man, I understand that. So I think what I've learned with my sister is when I see that she's not who she usually is, it's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I got to put on my soft voice for her. Like, I can look gangster sometimes. But I have to put on my soft voice for her to let her know that this is a moment where you can be vulnerable and talk to me, because of the tone of my voice is a reflection of the accessibility that you can have to me.
I think we all can relate here with that question, because I have a 17-year-old son, so welcome to the club. I live with him. And yes, what the sign that let me know that he's not okay, because he's not a talker, and I'm teaching him, you gotta speak up, but who's gonna force him, right? Nobody. But it's when I explained that soda can that you shake and shake. So he had a meltdown. He exploded. He exploded on me and his sister. And at that moment, we were looking at each other like, what's going on? What's going on? Whatever's in your mind, you need to let it out. So I know that the mantra said that tone is important. But in some other cases, you have to know when is the moment to say, hey, what's going on with you? Why are you venting out on me? Whatever it is, let's talk. And his sister wasn't as patient at that moment because she also had a lot of stress going on. But luckily, I was able to recognize that he had a melting moment. And after I said that, he just bawled and cried and finally let it out. And it was something that had nothing to do with me or his sister. So not all those moments are gonna come out soft and tender or because that's true. Sometimes we have to be gentle, but some other times it's like a tornado. And so how are you gonna handle that tornado? Sometimes you cannot be gentle with that tornado. You have to be able to hold it and say, I'm here, what's going on? Let it out on me, what's going on? And finally we got through that moment, so. Praying for you.
All right, thank you. I got you. You got a mic already?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I want to first brag. I believe we have two of the greatest mental health counselors on the planet. And I want to thank you for being here to facilitate this. But I do have a question with thought. You know, a lot of people have faced these unexpected, unknown crises. We see people decide to take action in a different way. How do we, as the other side of this conversation, what can you provide us and equip us with so we can help them be driven to you, be driven to the counselors, be driven to the support systems before they decide other? What can we do?
So you're speaking like in general in the community, not just necessarily on
Yeah,
campus.
because we got to get them to you.
Right.
But we know, you and I know, we got to do it a certain way. What can you give us that helps us to do that?
Resources.
Correct.
Resources. So what I did, this is generally like outside of the campus. I went on my social media page. I know, right? I went on my social media page and I said, hey, anybody that needs a counselor, anybody needs to talk to somebody, inbox me. No questions asked. I won't say anything else. I can't treat you because you're my social media friend, but I can give you some resources. 52 people emailed me that day or inboxed me that day. 52 people I sent that resource list out to. When we say it out loud, it's gonna hit somebody. It's gonna hit somebody. We just have to be willing to open up that door. And sometimes we have to be willing to take their hand and say, I will go with you for that first session. I'll get on the first phone call with you, the intake session with you. Sometimes we have to go another step, which means we gotta move outside of our comfort zone. Because if I watch you struggle, that's gonna put me in a bad place, right? Like I don't wanna see somebody that I love and care for struggle, but sometimes we have to do that. But yeah, it's getting the resources, definitely there.
Thank you for doing that. I think, just social, it's power in social media.
Yeah.
You use that story right, people respond. Now, Lamontre, this question's for you. We know that college students can be very impressionable. They want to join teams, organizations, and other groups while on campus. How can student leaders and student organizations encourage counseling and mental health treatment just as much as they do recruiting and membership for other orgs?
Oh, okay, with the question. I like that question. I think for me, when I can only speak for myself, but what I would like to see is I made it a requirement for my student leaders or my student body to go see the counselor. I mean, because when you are a student leader, your mental capacity goes from like 5 to 50 quick. So I think I personally required that you go see Dr. Alexander because she's gonna get you together. Like, because it's a lot. So I think what I would like to see from other student leaders is one, taking the initiative to recognize that even though you're leading, you still have to be a support system and you still have to show that vulnerability. Because I think oftentimes when you are a student leader, it looks like it's always together. And it's not always together. I have bad days. And I think that's what we have to show is one, that vulnerability, and two, make it a requirement that you go see counseling. And I think as they got to do it, a few of my peers were like, man, Marsha, thank you for that. Because I didn't realize that once I got into it, how it could help me later.
Yeah, I think, as a former SGA president and former apostles of the Untitled Chapter of Omega South Architecture Incorporated.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to let y'all know what it is, just in case you thought wrong. There's influence. There's influence, but there's influence that organizations have, the SGA has, that hits it a little different, right? If we make something cool, if we, like you said, you made it a requirement. I think when I was SGA president, you weren't coming on my campus wearing another school t-shirt. No, we weren't having that. And so I made t-shirts specifically for Virginia State, and I would say, hey, if you bring me your t-shirt from Norfolk State, Hampton, Howard, wherever, FAMU, I'll give you a fresh, brand new Virginia State t-shirt to try to increase the Trojan pride on campus. And so to that point, I want to say thank you for that, because there's power in your student boards and in your student leadership on campus. We got a good question from the audience.
Yeah, I have a challenge to our students, and particularly in student organizations, whether they're Greek or leadership organizations, to not make it an either or, to partner. To start partnering with the counseling services, to have programs. We have parties, we have homecoming. Let's have a mental health seminar where we all get together and partner, because again, I think the influence comes in, particularly people who are not accustomed to that, when they see the people who they consider the leaders and all of those folks, when they see them having those kind of programs, it just kind of opens the door. So I challenge our organization to work with the counseling centers, to work with those offices, and you can have a big spring fling or whatever your party is, have a big mental health meltdown day or whatever you're going to do that's going to bring these services in, because when we work together, that's when we go far. When we work alone, we just go fast. So we got to learn how to work together and partner with it. This has just been amazing to just hear the stories and the work that's being done, because there are students out there who still feel, that they can't, that it's that stigma if I'm seen. And I tell you, I tell students I used to have, if you haven't been to the counseling center, then I will take you there. You really need to be there. So my challenge is to our student organizations and to our counseling centers, reach out to these organizations to say, how can we partner? Let us come in and do some programming for you. And then I bet some of our organizations, that'll grow. It'll grow nationally and other countries. So that's my challenge to our organization.
No, I love that, first of all, because I believe in partnership and collaboration is key to a lot of things. And during my pandemic presidency, LOL, in addition to raising $15,000 in scholarships for our student body, we did partner with Dr. Alexander and create an initiative called Vibe of the Tiger, where students would get on every month, or I think it was every 2 weeks, and they would get on Zoom, and it would just be a moment where it would just like Dr. Alexander would come or Ms. Belton would come, and they would just listen, or they would just have a moment where we can talk about what's going on or what's happening, or even in our town hall meetings. I host a town hall meetings every month just to check in with our student body. So I definitely agree with that. And any other student leaders as well, I definitely think that was a privilege and power, again, in being a student leader and collaborator.
That's one of the things I think is helpful for other campuses to understand, that we would not have been able to do it just ourselves. We have partnered with the student organization. So one of the things that they do when they're making their calendar for the year, they email us and ask us our availability so that we can be on their schedule.
I'll go ahead and watch.
And another thing that, since we were talking about Greek, students know that Dr. Alexander and I are so that kind of helps to, kind of like bond with us in that sense, like, oh, they're Greek as well. Another thing that I'm familiar or I can relate with students is I was an international student when I went to my HBCU. I was in the basketball team when I went to my HBCU. So they were like, oh my gosh, you're just like us. So when they see that, it's easier for them to come to us. And what is so beautiful is that they come to us, actually they reach out to us all the time. And for our mental health week preparation, we do a lot of events for mental health week. And we encourage all organizations and groups to come and present for us, and do something with us. So that is kind of like we're trying to constantly ingrain in our organization.
And that's going to lead to my next question. But before I get to there, you mentioned about partnerships, and I think it's important. that we do open our arms and that we do welcome partnerships. I did a hybrid program with a client of mine in which we were able to really engage a lot of students virtually and in person around just the conversation of mental health. And I had Lance Gross join and Kara Gaines, who's a certified therapist, but these people have a great influence, right? So those are the ones that draw your attention, but then the conversation will keep you. And so it's always that key. Now, one of the questions that we did get in the chat was, what are some steps, Dr. Alexander, Ms. Bell, that you would recommend to other HBCUs that may not yet be at the support level of your institution?
Sitting down talking with the student body, doing a focus group, actually helping them or involving them in the process of developing that mental health service within the community. And if you can't have full-time clinicians on staff, it's really grant funding. There is grant funding out there available to employ. Both of our positions are grant funding. So actually being open to and not thinking that it has to come all out of student tuition fees or what have you. But the student body focus is going to be important, working with your community leaders, because believe it or not, there are a lot of people in the community who want to volunteer. I get those calls at least once a month. Somebody just asked me this morning, what can I do at Power Queen to help in the mental health clinic? So there are people in the community that want to help.
Cool. Thank you for that. Because I think these are best practices that we have to share, amongst our community. Because if, you all mentioned a couple of things today. I said, oh, I wish I could get with y'all so I could pass them to, Virginia State and, Claflin and some of the other schools that I have relationships with the presidents, just so that way they'll be aware of what they could do. Because right now it's a real interesting time. And I think we have to be able to manage from going from full throttle to virtual, and then virtual to hybrid, and then probably, then at some point we'll go from hybrid back to in person. And so, that in itself is, it's double edged. I don't know when I'm gonna get in. I don't know how to handle it. So definitely. Is there any other questions from the audience before we conclude? You have one.
Really quick. We talked a lot about from kind of just student perspective with no gender attachment to it. But what do you do when you have an alpha male father and a young man who is struggling with depression, anxiety, and those things? How do you help that alpha male father be an example or soften up a little bit so that we won't lead that young man down to potentially thinking about harming themselves or scared to come to their parent because their dad is such a strong-willed advocate against therapy or any type of counseling?
That is so specific, but it is a good question. I think what we have to do first is education and helping people understand that mental health and mental illness are two different things. And what does mental health look like? What does anxiety look like? What will it look like if you keep pushing your son to this? Like, are you in a good space? Like, if we really have a conversation about it. But sometimes it's in a global setting. It's not a one-on-one setting. So you're almost trying to get it through them by osmosis. But if we can have more frank conversations like this, where men are watching, and like Jamil has his program, like you actually see Black males in a position where they're talking about mental health, they're talking about treatment, they're talking about research, they're talking about the outcomes. That is what will help destigmatize this in our communities. Emotional difficulties are not a feminine trait. That's what we really have to help people understand. It is not a feminine trait. It is not a sign of weakness. Just like when she mentioned the illnesses before, I tell people I have asthma. If I go running without my albuterol, I'm going to pass out. And I have no problem passing out. I will faint, reset, and get back up. However, if I do my albuterol before I take off, I'm going to have a much better time. If we can talk to them about how if you go to treatment before the actual crisis, you'll have a much better time. If you take medication before the crisis, you'll have a much better time. So it's getting them to understand that the brain and the heart are just like any other organ of the body. And sometimes they function at a deficit. And we have to treat that deficit in order for us to perform at our optimal level.
That's really good.
You know, and I appreciate the question though. I think we have to really address those things, because like you said, that's where it starts, right? You want to go on, Jim?
And what I was gonna add is, luckily, we work with adult students, our students are young adults. So they really don't need their parents' permission to come counseling. So that is also an alternative that they can, they have their confidentiality, their privacy, but we do tell them, eventually you're gonna have to stand up for yourself, because when you go home, what do you do? So I think there's, like Dr. Alexander said, start working through your journey of breaking that stigma, because that's something that you can choose to break those chains or those patterns, unhealthy patterns from the past.
Go ahead.
Just from a child's perspective, from a child's perspective, I completely understand that, because I have a younger brother, and my dad is very strong in his head. Like, Black men, they are different, because they are kings, right? They are kings. When you're a king, you naturally want to rule and make sure that everything, is as follows. But one thing that I appreciate seeing Prez with his son, that gave me a different perspective on how he makes Mike come to campus and sit with him at work and pay attention to those little things. Like those, I think for me, what I would have liked to see as a child growing up is to see my father take initiative in mentoring the child and understand that these things are acceptable in their case. So I think with what you're saying, I think what we would like to see, or what I would like to see, is more men taking ownership in grooming their children and understanding that this emotion doesn't have a gender. Everybody goes through that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Now, before we end and conclude today's amazing conversation, do you all want to give some final thoughts?
Yes, okay, so I guess I have the mic. I would just like to say, in terms of mental health and the organizations on campus, one event that I went to as a sophomore or sophomore, right before my gosh, I'm a senior. This is weird. I attended. Yes, I'm sorry, y'all. It's hitting me today, I guess. But one thing that I appreciated, we were having an event in the dorms with the amazing women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and they were doing amazing work when it came to the sisters, and just giving us an opportunity. I'm not a member, but it gave me an opportunity to be able to know that those older women were there to listen, and they made it personal, and they gave us our phone numbers, and they allowed us to see that even though they look a certain way, or they have, their opportunities and how active they were on campus, they still were vulnerable for us, to be there and lead us. So I think for me, that changed a lot, because it motivated me as a student leader to want to collaborate with other student leaders to know that it's okay.
My last words are a great appreciation for Rooted in Resilience and the work that you guys are doing, because before Coach West started to me, I had never heard of it. So I do want to commend you all. And it really is refreshing, because I even had the full stats for a program I had this morning, and I was very well aware that people of color were not represented. I was looking at clinical supervisors of color. We were not represented. So I applaud you guys. I thank you guys for having this. I hope you come back, that we treated you well. And thank you, Coach West, for organizing this, and Dean Thompson for helping you pull it all together. But it's been great, and I enjoyed meeting you guys. Thank you for coming on campus.
I hope you all were enlightened, inspired, informed, and enjoyed this panel. As soon as you log off, I look forward to seeing you log on to www.joinallofus.org and signing up to be a participant for this important research study.
Need that.
And just to just reiterate what Dr. Alexander said, just very grateful for this opportunity, this time to make an influence and impact on students and staff and all of our guests today. I'm just grateful that we have this space. So we just keep it coming.
Yes. For those that give a round of applause, So I'd like to conclude today's conversation on behalf of the Rooted in Resilience team. One, I want to say thank you all for putting this together because it's an amazing conversation and we can just get started, right? And I want to thank everyone for tuning in virtually, those that came in person. I want to thank you lovely ladies today for giving, some of us some personal information and making the conversation very personable, but then also supporting with some good facts and get some research that was very imperative for us today. And I want to leave everyone with the thought that, it's okay to go to counseling. It's okay to seek professional help. Just like those that go to the gym and get in shape, it's okay to go to therapy and get your mental right. And so I concluded on that, and I just want to say thank you.
So we have a little swag bag for each of you. Thank you so much. A little all of us bling bling. We love you. So this has been an amazing afternoon day. So we thank y'all for being here. Y'all on virtual, we thank you for hanging in there. This has been great. And the comment, one of the statements that was made is okay not to be okay. That just resonated with me. It is okay not to be okay. But we're here to make a difference. And again, you have to be a champion for your own health. Because if you don't do that, who's going to do that for you? And it's a generational thing, right? We got to get it right now so it'll be greater later. So, and one a quote that I'm always telling students that you have to give yourself to yourself before you give yourself away. Ooh, drop that. Drop that mic right there. Yes, give yourself to yourself before you give yourself away. Take care of yourself. Please take care of yourself. And it ain't over. So this is a weekend rooted in resilience. Tomorrow we will be at Our Calling, which is almost downtown, 1702 I heard now, South Cesar Chavez Street. So we will be there starting at 1 o'clock to 5. It's going to be we're going to be inside. We're going to be outside. We have food vendors. We have all kinds of information out there. We got a kids zone, so bring your kids. It's going to be great times. We have entertainment, like a lot of it. So come on out tomorrow, and then Sunday, because we're doing the 3 C's: college, community, and church. So church, we have partnered with Friendship West here in Dallas, and we will be presenting. Jade and I actually are giving our testimony and learning a little bit more about the All of Us research program. So that's going to be at 10 o'clock. It's going to be streamed through their social outlets, as well as MPHC, the National Panhellenic, YouTube and Facebook, and I think Facebook, Twitter, all of this stuff. So it ain't over. We are resilient, right? Say it. We are resilient. We are resilient. So stand in your resilience and be rooted. Stand strong. And thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Oh, we are getting a photo.
Post-survey QR code.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. So, where there's a pre, there's always a post. Yes. Please go and take that survey. We need that information because when we have that information, we know what we can do in the ways to bring you more information in the way that you can receive it. So please take 2 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it's going to take, but get it done. Get that survey done. So the QR code and the link should be in the chat. And we have it on our posters for all of you that are here. Just do that QR code. So, good night, everybody. Y'all right.